A calm voice opens a file that should not glow. Somewhere in a quiet office, a report marked for guarded eyes hums on a screen. It speaks without drama, yet every line feels like a hand on glass. The language is careful. The mood is steady. But underneath, there is weight. A drifting shadow seen not with sight, but with how stars behave when no one is watching. The document calls it an unknown traveler. It moves like a brushstroke across the night, not by light, but by gravity, a soft tug that shifts the sky's pattern by a breath. Imagine you look up tonight. The constellations hold their shape. Planets keep their paths. Yet somewhere beyond your gaze, starlight bends by the slightest degree, as if a gentle veil has been laid over it. The report measures this bend. It compares years of data and pauses at the difference. Lights that should be straight are slightly curved. Signals that should be even are quietly late. No alarms are raised. Instead, the file whispers, something heavy passes close enough to write in starlight. What makes a shadow without light? The report answers with simple grace: a rogue black hole. It is a thing born in collapse, carrying mass like a secret. Most black holes live at galactic centers, where millions of suns circle a dark core. But some are travelers. They drift after ancient kicks leftovers from supernova, from star clusters torn by tides, from galaxies that brushed each other and let pieces wander loose. A rogue black hole does not blaze. It does not flare unless it feeds. It is a fortress of mass that keeps its silence, moving through space as if time has nowhere else to be. Before we go deeper, if you're listening as you drift towards sleep, that's why these stories exist. Subscribe and tell me where and what time you're listening. I read them: Karachi at midnight, New York just past 3 a.m., London before dawn, Sydney at noon, like stars across the earth. Your notes become waypoints. Tiny lanterns reminding me that we watch the sky together. The report returns to its numbers. A spectrograph, which splits light into color, shows a hint, a tiny shift in starlight from a distant field, like a breath changed into a whisper. A telescope array reports an anomaly that does not fit the usual list: no comet tail, no errant satellite, no flare from a restless star. The note is gentle. Possible microlensing event, non-luminous source. It's a careful phrase. Microlensing is what happens when mass passes between us and a more distant light. For a short time, gravity acts like a lens. The background star brightens and fades with a smooth curve, as if someone pressed softly on the fabric of space. In the margins visible only to patient readers, the file sketches a path. Not a map of streets, but of currents, the slow rivers formed by galaxy clusters and the dark matter web. If our traveler comes from the distant lanes, it follows a route older than our sun, older than language, older than any dream. The report does not claim to know. It only holds a possibility carefully, like a delicate fossil. The writing understands how hope can tip into story. So it balances, one page of clues, one page of caution. The narrator inside the file, yes, reports have a kind of voice, explains the silence. The object does not glow. No heat, no flash. Only gravity that nudges what can be nudged. The path of an asteroid, the timing of a pulsar's beat, the color angle of a star's light. In one figure, a single line curves by a hair. In another, error bars stand like fence posts, reminding everyone that noise can dress like signal. The tone remains calm. The team has seen oddities before. But this time, some of the oddities point in the same direction. What does a rogue black hole look like in your mind? Think of a small, perfect circle where nothing escapes, wrapped in a cradle of silence. There is no edge you could touch, only a boundary where light loses the game. Yet its presence spreads, not as light, but as influence. It writes softly in motion: orbit, trajectory, timing. A meteor shower could arrive a day off its usual rhythm. A comet in the outer garden could lean a fraction toward a new path. No danger sings here, only subtle grammar, the way a river writes curves in the land without ever raising its voice. In one section, the report breaks into patient steps. First, the observation, a background star brightening with a smooth, rule-following shape, and then returning to normal. Second, the cross-check. Other telescopes confirm the curve. Third, the color test. The spectrograph sees no shift that a flare would make, only the clean bend of light. Fourth, the timing audit. A pulsar's beat in the same region slips by a fraction for a few weeks, then steadies. Each small piece is not proof. Altogether, they become a pattern worth a quiet breath. The chapter of the mind turns to scale. The traveler, if it is what the numbers suggest, is far beyond the planets we know. The solar system, sturdy and balanced, feels no quake. Orbits remain in the dance they have practiced for billions of years. Earth keeps its rhythm, and the moon holds its tide. Most of what this visitor does is right on distance. Small marks on comets at the edge. Slow changes in star fields that only careful eyes detect. The comfort is true. We live in a stable neighborhood. The wonder is also true. Stability can still be visited by mystery. The writing lingers on Lensing again, as if to teach by lullaby. Mass bends space. Light follows space. So light bends too. Imagine a lamp shining through a window. Now imagine a glass marble drifting between lamp and window. For a breath, the light forms a halo. Then the marble moves on. The lamp is unchanged, yet the path of light carried a story. In the sky, that marble could be a fortress of mass with no shine, gliding on an old trajectory that began when something else died and left a dense heart behind. Scientists do not sleep on hunches. They rest on repeatable tests. The report outlines the plan. Repeat observations of the same star fields. Cross-reference timing arrays. Audit instrument noise. Model alternate causes. Could a dust cloud cause the same pattern? Could a star's faint companion be passing in front? Could software have mistaken a calibration dip for a cosmic whisper? Every question earns a trial. Only what survives the trials can stand. Only what stands can be called a candidate, and even then, the voice stays slow. Yet there is a sweetness in the uncertainty. The readers of the file, interns and veterans, night shift watchers and daytime analysts carry a quiet hope. No one shouts. No one dares a headline. But someone once underlined a phrase in blue. Drifting shadow, non-emissive, likely compact object. It looks like poetry that slipped into a lab notebook by accident. Maybe it was written at 3 a.m., when coffee turns cold and screens hum like winter air. Maybe a person leaned back, stared at the ceiling, and felt it, the sense that a message had arrived without words. If the traveler is a rogue black hole, how does it wander between galaxies? The report sketches the long lanes. Filaments of matter, faint and vast, connecting clusters like threads in a spider's web. Collisions in the early universe sent many objects drifting. Some slowed and settled. Some never did. A black hole that is small as black holes go, maybe a few times the mass of the sun, could wander for ages, neither lost nor guided, just following the deep shape of gravity itself. No plan, no will. Only the rules of a cosmos that writes with curves and tides. There is a section labeled Secrecy. The word sits there like a closed door. It does not shout conspiracy. It whispers caution. Early claims can mislead. People can fear what is not a threat. Funding can shift for the wrong reasons. The report advises a slow breath. Let more data arrive. Let more eyes look. If a messenger is real, it will leave more marks. If it is not, those marks will fade. In that patience, there is care not only for science, but for the way stories move through the world. The file ends, at least for now, with a question written in soft ink. What does the report truly say? And who first heard the cosmic whisper? It says only what the data can hold. It says a shadow tugged at starlight, and that tug had the shape of a small, dense traveler. It says the sky can still surprise the quiet and the careful. As for who heard it first, it was not a single person, not a lone hero at midnight. It was a chain of watchers, some new, some nearing retirement, passing a thread like a calm relay. One caught the curve. Another tested the curve. A third said, "Let's wait. Let's look again." The night beyond your window is the same night they study. The quiet in your room, the gentle rise and fall of air, matches the silence of telescopes that keep their vigil without complaint. Somewhere, starlight still crosses a great distance to reach us, and somewhere else, a traveler keeps moving through the soft, invisible lanes between galaxies. If you listen closely, not with ears, but with patience, the story is not loud. It is steady. It is a presence more than a sound. The screen dims. The report rests, waiting for the next observation, the next breath of proof. Outside, the sky holds its shape as if nothing has changed. And yet, in that same shape, a new idea has taken root. The idea that a hidden fortress of mass has brushed against our map and kept going. The glow fades on the monitor. The room empties. The silence deepens. Yet hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood. The report's margins become a map of hushed clues. Not headlines. Not alarms. Just a trail of careful notes, each one small enough to miss, together forming a shape. Astronomers have a word for such hints: anomalies. They do not roar. They lean. Starlight that should pass straight arrives slightly magnified. A clock in the sky slips by a fraction. A familiar meteor shower says hello a day late. The language stays calm, but the pattern it sketches feels like a soft footprint where nothing visible has walked. It begins in fields of exoplanets, where telescopes stare for hours and count shadows. When a planet crosses its star, the star's light dips, steady as a tide. Transit follows transit, like a heartbeat you can graph. But a few teams see timing shifts that do not fit the usual dance: tiny delays. Then tiny gains, a forbidden pattern that repeats across unrelated stars. The numbers are small, cat-soft. They do not break the rulebook. They annotate it. A margin note reads, "Check for microlensing influence along line of sight." Microlensing is gravity doing magic with honesty. A mass passes in front of distant light and acts like a lens, brightening and bending the light for a short time. Usually the lens is a star or a compact object within a galaxy. Here, the brightening is faint, and the timing wobbles are not tied to the planet itself. If a quiet traveler slid between us and many different targets, it could nudge multiple clocks without ever showing its face. The idea is bold. The tone is not. The data are laid out like smooth stones in a stream. Across the sky, a pulsar ticks. Pulsars are ultra-steady lighthouses, dead stars that spin and beam radio waves with metronome grace. One pulse follows another with the patience of a monk polishing the same step for years. Then, over weeks, the beat wanders by a breath. Too small to scare, large enough to measure. The timing array flags it. Analysts try every ordinary answer first. Rotation glitch, interstellar plasma, solar wind noise, instrument drift. Most explanations peel away. The leftover looks like a gentle tug, as if something heavy brushed the edges of the pulsar's path and moved on. Closer to home, a meteor shower arrives a day off its usual rhythm. Nothing dramatic, no fire on the horizon. Just thin, glittering threads that decorate the night sooner than the calendar predicts. The parent comet's orbit has not changed. The dust streams are where they should be. And yet the timing slides. Meteor observers, careful and grounded, resist myth. They come through wind maps, integration windows, and counting methods. The result: error bars hold, but the offset remains. A sticky note in the log: small external perturbation not excluded. The solar wind, too, wears a slightly different shimmer. Spacecraft that taste at wind counting its particles, charting its gusts to record a faint adjustment in how it curls around the magnetospheres of outer planets. Think of a breeze redirected by a statue you can't see. The instruments murmur in numbers. The models refit themselves and ask for another try. A paragraph in the analysis section is a lullaby of caution. Attribution uncertain. Correlate with deep field lensing alerts and pulsar timing datasets. One by one, these clues become a playlist. The investigators do not blare them on a single speaker. They blend them. A shared coordinate window appears, a region of sky where many lines could pass if something compact is drifting there. Trajectory models rise on the screen. Slow arcs, possible velocities, the kind of curves a massive traveler would draw if it were moving not toward us, not away from us, but across our gaze. The words that guide this step are plane, orbit, path, inclination, perihelion. Each term is a tool, quiet and clean. Perihelion, the point of closest pass to the sun, is guessed at by fit, then softened by humility. The traveler, if it is real, does not come inside the busy lanes of the planets. It stays wide, a silent spectator near the dark borderlands where comets rest like dandelion seeds. The models show what a passing mass could do there. Stir the long-period comets, tilt a few envelopes, thin one meteor stream and thicken another. To a casual sky watcher, nothing changes. To careful eyes, the night writes one extra letter. Error bars stand in every frame like small fences in fresh snow. They are not walls. They are reminders. Clouds make light misbehave. Sensors warm and cool. Humans pick patterns from noise because our minds love stories. The team answers this with ritual. Blind tests, cross-calibration, repeat fields at different hours, different nights, different instruments. Where the results hold shape under new light, confidence grows by a hair. Where they do not, the plots fade into the background, honored for trying. The language of the report moves like a river in winter, slow, clear, reflective. Forbidden's pattern becomes an unlikely coincidence across independent datasets. Harbinger becomes candidate lens consistent with a compact, non-luminous mass. It is bedtime science, precise, careful, and gentle. You could fall asleep listening to it and wake with the picture intact. The listener learns why patience matters. In space, proofs are quiet. They gather like frost until one morning you see the field is white. A figure in the document pulls the threads together. Exoplanet transit timing on one axis, pulsar delays on another, meteor stream offsets on a third. Dots cluster where they should not. A line, faint and honest, runs through them. It is not a straight line. It curves with the sky, respecting geometry. The caption does not scream. Weighted multi-signal fit suggests transient gravitational influence. Probability of common cause rises under conservative priors. In softer words, separate whispers might share a mouth. Trajectory models take their turn, showing families of paths that could cross the shared coordinate window. Some are too fast galactic bullets that would leave sharper marks. Some are too slow local drifters that would smear the signatures for years. One family feels just right. A passerby with the mass of a small black hole, cruising on an ancient line. The simulators paint the motion in thin light, not to make art, but to help tired minds see the idea. A drifting shadow gliding between distant lamps and our waiting eyes. Perihelion shifts in minor bodies get special care. Asteroids in certain belts display tiny changes in their closest approach points, as if their ellipses have been nudged and then allowed to recover. The changes are within known ranges. Yet the direction of the changes shows a gentle bias that points toward the same region flagged by lenses and clocks. The investigators test rival stories, a swarm of smaller masses instead of one. A dark gas cloud. Statistical fluke. Each rival explains some of the clues, none pose a full reply. The quiet hypothesis remains a single compact traveler. And so the tone balances awe and method. Awe, because this would be a rare kind of message, a black hole walking without light, writing only with how the world around it moves. Method, because awe is a beautiful bias and must be trimmed. The team notes what they do not know: the exact mass, the true speed, the origin. They list what they do, re-observe fields, extend timing runs, refine meteor counts, share anonymized data with external groups. In every line, patience is a lantern. The chapter the mind hears ends as the night does soft, with meaning tucked under the edge of sleep. Could all these small changes point to one drifting harbinger? If so, what silent history trails behind it? What nebula's ash? What shattered cluster? What forgotten supernova's last breath? And if it keeps its path, what gentle mark will it leave next another late meteor, another bow in distant starlight, another clock that slips and settles? The sky holds its calm, but in that calm, the question glows. A whisper moving where nothing seems to move. A message waiting to be understood. The night looks still, but it isn't. Space is like a lake with no wind quiet on the surface, full of slow currents underneath. When something heavy moves through it, the water doesn't splash. It bends. The bends remain after the traveler has passed, like ripples that keep a record. Astronomers read those bends. They call them gravity's fingerprints. Picture a small, dense object sliding across the sky, invisible except for what it does to other things. A star's path tilts by a hair. A comet far from the sun stirs like a leaf at the edge of a pond. The lines on a spectrograph, a tool that splits light into color, shift a tiny step to the red or the blue. None of these changes shout. All of them whisper the same word: mass. Mass speaks in motion. You can't see a black hole, but you can see what it makes the world do. Imagine walking at night with a flashlight. When you pass a window, the glass bends the beam a little. The wall behind it glows in a new place for a moment, then returns. Einstein taught us that space and time are like that glass. Mass is the glass maker. Light obeys the shape, and the shape changes wherever mass is. This is gravitational lensing, Einstein's lens, honest, gentle, and exact. In the soft light of a control room, a figure on a screen shows a star slowly brightening and then fading. There's no flare, no explosion. The curve is smooth, like a wave washing up and then sliding back down the sand. A lens passed in front. Not a lens of glass, a lens of gravity. The team compares the curve to models. If the lens were a star, the pattern would look one way. If it was smaller, denser, darker, like a rogue black hole, the pattern would look another way. The match is not perfect, but it is close enough to hold in both hands for a while. Another display shows an asteroid's orbit as a pale ellipse. Ellipses are the calm handwriting of space, but this one is smudged. The point of closest pass, its perihelion, has shifted by a whisper. The numbers say the change is within known ranges. Radiation pressure, small tugs from neighboring rocks, soft pushes from sunlight called the Yarkovsky effect. Yet when the team stacks many orbits together, the smudges lean the same way. One nudge is a shrug. 1,000 nudges, lined up, become a trace. Farther out, at the edge of the solar system's cold garden, a comet that should sleep feels a tiny pull. Not enough to wake it this century, just enough to turn it on its pillow. In drawings, the Oort cloud looks like a spherical haze. a cradle of silence where icy seeds wait. If a compact traveler passes near that cradle, a few seeds can roll. Some will drift inward over long ages, long after any of us are gone. The team marks a few candidates. Long-period comets that might someday return as a shy reply to a message we only now suspect was sent. The spectrograph returns like a friendly guide. It doesn't see objects. It sees behavior. When a star moves closer, its light shifts a little bluer. When it moves away, it reddens. But the traveler does not change a star's true speed. It changes the path the light takes to reach us. That path grows longer or shorter by a breath. On the spectrograph, the lines lean by a fraction, then settle. A child could miss it. A careful night shift analyst will not. The chapter slows, and the camera in your mind drifts over Einstein's lens again, because good sleep comes from simple pictures. Space is a fabric. Mass presses into it, making a shallow bowl. Light is like marbles rolled across the sheet. The marbles curve around the bowl and meet your eye from a slightly new path. If the bowl moves, the curve moves. If the bowl is small and very deep like a black hole, the bend is sharp but brief. The star behind brightens a little, as if someone breathed on the lens and wiped it clean. In this quiet science, pictures help. The team describes graphics for those who listen in the dark. First, a luminous haze, a field of faint stars, soft and steady. Next, transparent lines that curve like ribbons. Each ribbon is a possible trajectory, modeled from the clues so far. Where the ribbons cross, the region darkens, like a finger pressed into silk. That crossing is not a promise. It's a place to look, slowly and often. Now the view turns to orbits, those patient loops that keep time. Gravity shapes them with care. If a rogue black hole passes, it does not rip them open. It nudges. An asteroid's path widens or tightens by a grain. A small moon's timing drifts by a beat and then recovers. You would never see it with your eyes alone. But line up decades of measurements and the patterns blush. The astronomers overlay old plates with modern CCD images. They compare pencil marks from a century ago with digital dots recorded last week. The dots are loyal. The pencil was careful. Both together say, something touched this dance. What else could write the same marks? The team tests rivals. A faint gas cloud can bend light, but not with this exact curve. A swarm of many small masses could mimic a single larger lens, but would make more noise across time, not less. A hidden dim star would leave a color trace of its own. The spectrograph says no. Software errors are always suspects. The engineers feed dummy signals through the system, swap detectors, change temperatures, and blind label the files so the analysts won't know which is which. The fingerprint appears even when no one is allowed to expect it. In another room, radios hum. A pulsar's beat, steady as a metronome, wandered last month by a breath. Now it's steady again. Some pulsars glitch on their own, their crusts crack, their spin jumps. But this one has a calm history. The timing arrays software paints a thin gray band for noise and a thin blue line for the measured beat. The blue line drifts out, lingers, and returns, as if a quiet hand pushed on a pendulum once and then let it be. The timing team doesn't declare victory. They place the blue line on the same star chart as the lensing fields and the nudged orbits. The lines overlap enough to keep everyone awake, but also enough to help them sleep, because patterns that return under new tests are a kind of lullaby. The narrator in your ear stays gentle. Gravity feels like a law, but it also feels like weather-steady air with faint breezes. Those breezes shape dunes over long seasons. Here, in the sky, the dunes are orbits and the breeze is a passing fortress of mass. A black hole is not a monster in this story. It is an ancient traveler with no light to announce itself. It does not hunt. It does not plan. It glides along old roads laid down when galaxies formed their first words. A question rises like mist. How fragile are the patterns we trust? The answer is both comforting and deep. Orbits are resilient. They resist, they flex, they return. The solar system is strong because it is old, and age selects for balance. But on the edges, where comets rest, where faint belts drift, small changes accumulate. 1,000 tiny nudges can become a new track for a few stones. Over centuries, those stones may write a brighter line across our night, a meteor that arrives one day early, a comet that comes home with a slightly different tilt. Change is eternal, but alarm is not necessary. The sky is a patient artist. The chapter widens to the map itself. Star maps are not only for sailors and poets. They are tools for gravity readers. The team plots a line through fields where lensing curves have appeared. The line is not sharp. It is more like a brushstroke, wide at the edges, deep in the center. Along this brushstroke, they mark possible dates when a microlensing event could repeat. They also mark windows when a particular comet family might show a gentle thinning or thickening. In each window, observers on different continents will listen together. Telescopes will share the night like friends sharing a blanket. Listen to the room at 3 a.m. The servers hum. A kettle clicks. Someone laughs softly at a graph that finally agrees with last year's graph. It is not triumph. It is relief. Spectrographs align. Timing arrays quiet. Orbit solvers converge. No single piece is enough. But brick by brick, the wall takes shape. At the center of that wall is a thought you can hold in one breath. Gravity leaves a fingerprint, even when the hand is gone. Now the voice turns reflective, as a good bedtime story should. If this messenger is real, what else is it touching? Not in fear, but in wonder. Did it pass near a nebula and stir a faint plume? Has it brushed the edge of a star nursery where new suns are learning their steps? Did it leave a distortion long ago in a galaxy we now see as it was before life on Earth began? The scale is vast, but the feeling is small and human. We are reading old footsteps in a snow that never melts. Finally, the camera in your mind drifts back to the sky as you know it. The constellations keep their shapes. The moon pours light on water and roofs and roads. Somewhere beyond, a quiet traveler moves on. Its proof is not in a shout, but in a chorus of softened voices, starlight bent, orbits nudged, colors tilted, clocks delayed and returned. The notes fit. The chord holds. The music is low and slow, meant for those who listen. You breathe out. The lake of space looks still again. But if you stare with patient eyes, you can see the faintest trembling of the surface where something heavy slipped by. The ripples widen and fade. They leave a pattern only careful hands can trace. The glow at the horizon softens. The instruments rest. The maps wait on the table. The anomaly is not solved, not yet. And in the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself. The past arrives without footsteps. It slips in as paper edges and soft screens, as pencil notes pressed into old logbooks, as time stomps the glow like tiny stars along a margin. The story of the traveler does not begin with a single shout. It begins with years that only later make sense, like beads strung after you find the thread. At the start of this timeline, the night is much the same, a roof of starlight, a hush in control rooms, the soft click of a relay. In one archive, a report from a small observatory lists minor variance in background field probable calibration drift. No one worries. Instruments breathe. Weather changes. The line returns to normal the next week. But the entry earns a yellow tab, a quiet look again for later. Across the decade, similar notes appear. A lensing survey sees a smooth brightening in a faint star and files it as a routine event. A comet survey marks subtle shift in predicted debris timing. Within uncertainty, a student team overseeing exoplanet transits flags light curve jitter not matching star spot models. None of these moments are dramatic. They are the hum of science small questions stacked neatly, awaiting rain. The thread tightens when an intern, new to the night shift and proud of being trusted with real data, notices a hidden blip. The star field she monitors brightens and fades with a shape she recognizes from training microlensing's clean curve. Yet the color data whisper a puzzle. There is no extra glow, no companion star, just a clear bend. She circles the plot in pale pen and writes, "Non-emissive lens? Check crosslines." Her advisor, careful and kind, nods and tells her to sleep. They will check in the morning. They do. The curve holds. The mark stays. Further along the thread, a retired engineer visits his old lab. He used to fix spectrographs with patience and tape labels that aged like tea leaves. He remembers a night years earlier during a comet sweep when the meteor stream arrived a day off rhythm. An omen, someone joked then, the kind of word that only appears after midnight. He brings in the old logs, their pages smelling faintly of dust and coffee. The dates line up with other odd notes, transit delays, pulsar beats that wandered by a hair. He does not claim an answer. He sets the logs on the table and says, with gentle pride, "You might find a friend in these." The labs move at different speeds, but share the same care. One group repeats the lensing analysis using older code. Another rebuilds it. A timing array reaches deeper into the pulsar records, cleaning the data the way a conservator cleans a painting's slow strokes, no hurry. Meteor watchers refine their counts, teaching new cameras to tell sparkle from noise. Each dataset stays in its lane until someone draws a faint line between them on a whiteboard. The line is not straight. It curves with the sky. Years compress into a grid of sticky notes. Colored squares mark dates, telescopes, instruments, and people. Coffee cups leave rings like small galaxy clusters. Peer review drafts pile up, each draft a little more cautious in wording, a little more sure in the figures. A rule repeats and repeats. Name uncertainty, respect error bars. Never promise more than the data can hold. The tone of the work becomes the tone of the story, calm, patient, honest. In this quiet drift through time, instruments change as people do. The old plates, silvered and lovely, give way to CCDs that catch photons like dew. Spectrographs learn to split light with greater finesse, their lines sharper, their whispers clearer. Telescopes widen their eyes. Arrays synchronize their clocks until the sky becomes a field of metronomes. Each upgrade does not replace the past. It translates it. The old marks remain, measured anew, aligned with the present so the thread does not break. The interns become analysts. The analysts become mentors. The retired engineer visits less often, but his notes live on in scans that carry his tidy handwriting into the present. The quiet timeline is not just about signals. It is about hands and eyes, about people who showed up at odd hours and left sugar packets in drawers for the next shift. You can feel it in the margins, the human pattern behind the cosmic one. A review meeting unfolds like a tide. One team presents the exoplanet timing, small delays repeating across unrelated systems, soft as footfalls. Another shares the microlensing candidates, smooth curves without color changes, consistent with a compact, non-luminous lens. The pulsar group shows a month-long wander that settled back, the kind of slip a passing mass could cause. The meteor observers offer their careful outlier, a shower that arrived early, with an error yet leaning with the others. On a single slide, the dates stack. A window opens, not in space alone, but in time, Nights clustered across years when the sky seemed to breathe differently in the same direction. Peer review is the next season. Drafts travel to other teams with quiet requests. Try to break this. The replies come back with questions sharpened by kindness. Did you blind the analysts? Yes. Did you swap detectors? Yes. Did you correlate with solar activity and interplanetary plasma models? Yes. Did you test a swarm of smaller masses against one larger lens? We did. The swarm explains some spread, but adds noise elsewhere. A compact lens remains plausible. Nothing decisive. Nothing dismissed. Coffee keeps cooling. Servers keep humming. A midnight note becomes a morning footnote. A footnote becomes a figure caption. A caption becomes a paragraph that finally says aloud what everyone only whispered before. The anomalies may share a cause. The wording is careful, consistent with, compatible with, does not exclude. The style is a lullaby, but the meaning is firm. After years of watching, the pattern holds. The timeline widens to older skies. Deep in archives, the team finds a forgotten plate from a century ago. Star positions marked by pencil and patient hands match modern coordinates with humble accuracy. The field looks the same, yet not the same, the way a familiar street looks older when rain has passed. A faint brightening recorded long ago, dismissed then, unremarkable, sits near the path the models now prefer. It is a single bead, not proof, but it fits the thread with the grace of a piece that had been waiting. Another year, another meeting. A quiet decision. Share a cautious summary with a small circle of arrays and observatories. Not a press release. A bridge. The memo lists dates to watch, regions to watch, and what counts as a meaningful echo. A lensing curve here, a timing smear there, an orbit that shifts in a familiar direction. The tone asks for patience, not headlines. The response from the circle is the kind of kindness science does best. We will listen with you. And so the timeline is no longer a row of small rooms. It is a field of lanterns, each lab a tent of light under the same night. When clouds stop one watcher, another begins. When dawn ends a run on one continent, dusk starts it elsewhere. Time, which was once a string of solitary nights, becomes a shared river. Data flows through peer review channels, through calm emails, through code repositories where comments read like bedtime notes. This might be nothing. It might be something. Let's keep it safe. What did the traveler pass before it brushed our map? The timeline carries the question softly backward. Perhaps long ago it skirted a nebula and lifted a faint plume, a whisper in gas that drifted for ages. Perhaps it once threaded the outskirts of a star nursery, where protoplanets learned their steps and felt a tiny tilt. Perhaps, even earlier, it left a faint lens in a galaxy now too far to remeasure, a small bow in starlight that no one then knew to seek. The past holds more silence than answers. Yet in that silence, patterns sleep, ready to wake when called by new eyes. The last beat on the thread is not a conclusion. It is a breath. Dates are written for new observations, not with urgency, but with care. Instruments are cleaned. Clocks are checked. The intern who found the blip, now older, now the one who brings tea to others, labels a folder with a simple word: listen. The retired engineer sends a postcard with a doodle of a comet and a note: I still watch the sky. The timeline closes for the night the way all good work does. Chairs pushed in, lights lowered, screens dark. Yet the story remains open in the air between ticks of the building's quiet clock. Past meets present and does not rush the future. The beads hold their places on the thread. And as the room settles, the feeling lingers that the traveler has always been crossing our pages. Its mark faint but faithful, waiting for the moment we learn to read it. The glow at the window softens and the silence deepens. But somewhere within that silence, something patient continues to move, carrying a question that gently refuses to fade. The night opens like a book with the first page missing. What came before the traveler? The report does not claim to know the whole origin story. It lays out gentle steps instead, how stars are born, how they live, and how some end in silence so dense that even light cannot return. To understand a rogue black hole, begin with a star that was once anything but quiet. In a dark nebula, where dust is thick and starlight wears a gray coat, gravity gathers whispers into a seed. Gas folds inward, slow as winter breath. The cloud cools, then warms, then blushes with a faint glow. A protostar turns at the center. It drinks from a disk, pulling streams of matter down like threads into a whirlpool. Magnetic fields braid. Jets flash out at the pole's thin, bright lances that write lines through the shadow. Around the newborn light, pebbles tap and stick, growing into planet seeds. The nebula hums. A stellar system is learning its first steps. If the newborn star is small, its life will be long. It will sip fuel and glow like an ember that never tires. But if it is massive 10, 20, 50 times the mass of our sun, it burns hot and fast. Its core squeezes hydrogen into helium, helium into heavier ash. The layers of the star stack like pages, hydrogen burning above, helium burning below, then carbon, neon, oxygen, silicon, each shell a furnace, each furnace a ticking clock. This is the unsung part of every brilliant star, the quiet countdown to a final change. When the core becomes iron, the clock runs out. Iron does not give energy when fused. It takes. The star center falls inward. The outer layers, confused by the sudden release, race after it and rebound. A shock front blooms outward. In heartbeats, the star's face becomes a supernova light so bright it can cast shadows across a galaxy. The spectrograph reads lines like fingerprints. Neutrinos flee by the trillions, silent messengers passing through everything without pause. Dust grains form in the cooling fire, grains that will someday drift into new clouds, into new worlds, into you. What remains at the center depends on mass and on how the explosion breathes. A modest giant leaves a neutron star, dense as a mountain pressed into a teaspoon. A greater giant leaves a black hole, a fortress of mass wrapped in a boundary where light loses its way. The event horizon is not a surface. It is a choice the universe enforces. Once crossed, all paths point inward. There is no anger in it, no hunger. Only gravity, pure and patient. Most black holes live within systems. Some anchor the hearts of galaxies, supermassive and slow, holding star cities in wide orbits with an invisible hand. Others remain with the remnants of their birth, a companion star, a cluster, a family of siblings that survived the blast. But sometimes the birth kicks. The physics of the explosion is not perfectly symmetrical. A lopsided push sends the newborn remnant flying. Or the star was part of a binary, and when it collapses, the delicate balance breaks. One partner is flung away. The other, now a compact traveler, carries on alone. This kick is the start of a rogue. A newborn black hole does not glow. It carries no flame. It moves with the speed given by that ancient shove and by the slow tides of the galaxy's gravity. On long timescales, galaxies are not islands. They are boats on a dark ocean, drifting toward each other, weaving along filaments like roads between city lights. A black hole that has left its home can follow these roads, slipping across the outskirts of clusters, adopting the curve of larger tides. Rogue sounds wild. In truth, it is obedient to the oldest rules. The team writing the report keeps language simple. To find a rogue, you look for what it does, not what it is. But this chapter is about what it is and how such a traveler could carry the memory of its birth across ages. The black hole's mass tells a story. A few times the mass of the sun might point to a single massive star collapsing. 10, 20, 30 solar masses might hint at a star that ate well, or at a merger of remnants. A heavier rogue could be a stitch in a tapestry of collisions. Two black holes meeting a crowded cluster, spiraling together, ringing space-time like a bell with gravitational waves, then sailing off as one. Clusters are busy nurseries. Inside them, stars pass close enough to trade partners. Remnants gather near the center the way heavy stones settle in a jar when you shake it. Close encounters grow common. Two black holes can form a binary and lose energy through gravitational radiation, spiraling together. The final embrace releases a wave that shivers the universe. Most of the energy leaves as ripples in space-time, but not all the momentum cancels. The new remnant can recoil another kick, another chance at a road without a map. This is one path to a rogue, born in darkness, then reborn as something heavier, with a new speed and a new direction. Galaxy clusters themselves act as highways. Between them run filaments of matter-dark and luminous threads that shape the large-scale map. In these threads, the gravitational field is not flat. It leans. A compact traveler entering a filament can be guided for ages. It does not choose a route. The route is chosen by the gentle slope of the cosmic web. Over millions of years, the traveler can drift from one outskirts to another, crossing the halos of dwarf galaxies, brushing star streams, sliding past cold clouds too thin to shine. What does such a journey feel like from the traveler's point of view? There is no view inside a black hole, but the space around it tells a story. On one side, a handful of comets slumber in the outer dark of a solar system. On the other side, a faint star field forms a luminous haze. The traveler glides between, leaving only nudges, the slightest change in the comet's trajectory, the faintest lens in starlight. It has no heat to share, no radio to speak with, no glow in infrared unless it stirs gas enough to eat. Most of the time, it does not. It is not a hunter. It is a stone skipping across a pond that no wind disturbs. Rogue does not mean aimless, the report says, and the phrase lingers. If you could draw lines of gravity the way you draw isobars on a weather map, you would see lanes. They are soft, not sharp. They curve around halos and through voids. They are made by the whole orchestra of mass galaxies, clusters, dark matter seas. A rogue black hole hears that orchestra without ears. It follows the music because there is nothing else to do. Its path is a sentence written before it was born. Why so many births in darkness? Because massive stars are generous in life and brief in time. They pump energy into their neighborhoods, sculpting bubbles in the nebulae that cradle them. They die as fireworks. Their remnants, though, are parsimonious. They keep their energy close, and most keep their company. But every so often, a misstep, a kick, a merger, a tide, they stack their small differences into a departure. Once adrift, the black hole becomes the quietest kind of migrant, moving through epochs like a memory that never fully fades. The science remains tender, accessible. Imagine you're holding a map of a city you have never visited. The streets are named, the rivers curve. You can guess how people move. Now replace streets with filaments, neighborhoods with clusters, and cars with compact objects. Over time, the main roads carry more travelers. Some get trapped near busy intersections, galactic cores, where the supermassive black hole holds court. Others skirt the edge, following routes that only the patient cartographers of gravity could sketch. There are other ways to be born a rogue. Some stars are pulled from their galaxies during close passes, the way wind lifts leaves from a tree that never meant to let them go. These stars wander in the space between galaxies into galactic orphans. When they die, they leave remnants with no city to call home. A neutron star may be kicked further by a glitch. A black hole may remain a shy anchor to nothing at all, crossing the thin light of the outer night. In rare cases, a black hole formed. In the early universe, primordial, from density waves themselves, could still be wandering now, small and stubborn, a relic from a time before stars had even learned their names. The report does not claim this for our traveler. It keeps the option on the shelf, labeled unlikely, not excluded. If our traveler is a child of a giant star, what traces of the parent could remain? Not light, not heat, but the mass itself carries a memory, a number that narrows the family. If astronomers can weigh the lens by the strength of its bending, they can guess the birth. A 5 solar mass lens hums a different tune from a 20 solar mass one. Each narrows the stories that fit. Add in the path, its speed, its direction, and the picture focuses, like a telescope turned to bring a star into clean point. We return to the human room where these ideas rest. The narrators of the report are calm. They note, galaxy clusters are nurseries and highways. They add, rogue does not mean aimless. They underline, a traveler may be ancient. In the window's reflection, you can see the dim glow of a monitor and the silhouette of someone leaning closer, as if better listening will change the figure on the screen. Beyond the building, the city sleeps. Beyond the city, the night spills its slow rivers from horizon to horizon. There is a piece of comfort in the origin story. Black holes are not villains drawn to us. They are relics of stellar lives, carried by the tides of larger things. The solar system, snug in its orbit around the Milky Way's center, is a balanced dance. A rogue passing in the far dark does not undo that dance. It may pluck a comet's thread. It may tilt a long-period traveler by a whisper, but the planets keep their story. The word harbinger relaxes when scale is understood. The harbinger, if any, is knowledge. How gravity writes destinies not in warnings, but in quiet edits. And yet the poetry of the origin remains. Somewhere long ago, a star ended with a sigh that shook a galaxy. Somewhere later, two remnants found each other in a crowded cluster and became one, their last orbit ringing space with waves no ear could hear. Somewhere later still, the new traveler slipped into a filament and took the long road, a road measured not in miles or years, but in patience. Now it may be gliding near the outer gardens of our own system, not near in the way of neighbors, but near enough for delicate instruments to notice its passing. If you close your eyes, you can picture its birth in a single breath, a nebula's hush, a young star's fierce light, the layered furnaces counting down, the final fall, the sudden fire, and then the cradle of silence. No light, only mass. Only the shape it gives to space. The traveler carries no past on its surface. It has no scars to show. But the universe remembers. The dust made in the old supernova glows in other places. The neutrinos that fled now stream through everything, ghosting through mountains and seas. The elements forged in the parent star live in rocks and blood and the ink of this page. In a way, you are part of the traveler's origin too, because you were written by the same furnace, the same laws, the same patient hand. The questions that remain are kind and large. Was the kick that freed it a birth cry or a merger shove? Did it once belong to a family of stars now long scattered? As it crossed other gardens and left soft fingerprints there, meteor showers arriving one dawn early for watchers who also kept careful notes? The answers may arrive slowly or not at all. The sky is good at keeping quiet. The chapter settles into the kind of ending that is not an end. The traveler, born in darkness, continues in darkness, not as threat, not as omen, but as proof that the universe makes and remakes itself with steady grace. Somewhere out there, a soft glow of a distant nebula still swells where another star is being born. Somewhere else, A supernova has just sent its light racing outward, a future chapter for someone else to read. Between those beginnings and those ends, a small compact wanderer moves on, unhurried, unafraid, guided by roads it does not need to see. The room dims. The monitors rest. The words on the report glide into silence. And in that silence, the origin story lingers, not a shout, but a breath. A star's last light becoming a traveler's first step, and a traveler's step becoming the faintest tug on starlight. The glow at the horizon softens. The mind releases its maps. Somewhere, gently, an ancient traveler keeps going, and the darkness that bore, it feels less like emptiness and more like a patient memory, waiting to be understood. The detective work begins in a room that sounds like sleep. Fans hum. Keyboards barely click. Outside, the night is a soft glow. Inside, starlight arrives as numbers marching in quiet rows. This is how you study a traveler that refuses to shine. You don't look for it. You look for what it does. First, the telescopes. Some stare wide, surveying whole fields where faint stars tremble at the edge of vision. Others look narrow and deep, like needles threading one light through another. The watchers are patient. They let the sky repeat itself night after night, season after season, because repetition is how truth speaks when it is small. Microlensing is the first tool on the bench. Think of a lamp far away and a clear bead of glass drifting in front of it. For a moment, the lamp brightens and warps around the bead. No spark, no noise. Just gravity bending space and space guiding light. The curves this makes are simple and kind. A smooth rise, a calm peak, a gentle fade. In the control room, plots trace the curve like a breath drawn and released. If the bead were a star, color would creep into the signature. If the bead were dark and compact, the curve would keep its quiet face. The analysts stack events, toss out odd shapes, keep only those that match the honest mathematics of a lens that does not glow. Next, the spectrograph's sleek instruments that split light into thin, precise rainbows. They do not see objects. They hear behavior. A spectrograph listens for tiny shifts in color, clues that a star's light has taken a slightly longer or shorter road. When a massive traveler crosses between us and a distant field, the path bends. A line that should sit at one place on the rainbow leans a fraction, then returns. On their screens, the lines look rigid. Under deep zoom, they breathe. The breathing is faint, but consistent. Faint is fine. The cosmos is patient. The instruments learn to be patient too. Then, the clocks. Pulsars are clocks built by the universe itself, dead stars spinning with fierce order, sending out radio pulses you could set a calendar by. Timing arrays scatter across Earth like a field of ears, all listening to those beats. If something heavy brushes the edges of that field, the beats smear a little, then settle, like a metronome nudged by a finger and released. Software checks the smears against every ordinary thing. Noise in the detectors, gusts in the solar wind, slow drifts in interstellar plasma. When the ordinary is subtracted and the smear still stands, the array underlines the moment, then waits for another like it. One incident is an anecdote. Two begin a pattern. Three hint at a path. Orbit models get their turn. They begin with small bodies, the dependable belts and families that lace the solar system like beadwork. Asteroids write their lives as ellipses. Comets keep theirs as long arcs that rise and vanish. If a quiet fortress of mass passes wide, those lines do not snap. They tilt. Their closest approaches perihelia shift by a hair, then hold. Modelers test scenarios. The Yarkovsky effect that sunlight can cause. The subtle pull of neighbors. The slow grip of resonances with planets. They subtract all that, and where a few orbits keep leaning in one shared direction, a new dot appears on a map. Not a location, a probability soft, like breath on glass. The control room lives on trust and cross-checks. A team in one hemisphere sees a lensing curve on a Tuesday. Another team, staring at the same field from a different longitude on Wednesday, sees the tail end of the same curve. A third team, focused on timing, notices a tiny matching smear in a pulsar's beat that week. Nobody cheers. They tag the data and fold it into models. Later, in a meeting brightened by cups and graphs, the same three lines settle on the same region of sky, like birds choosing the same wire. The narrator's voice stays low, bedtime steady. The science remains simple on purpose. A traveler with no light still leaves tracks you can trace. A brightening without color, a rainbow line leaning by a breath, a clock beat slipping just once, an orbit shifting by a whisper. None of this proves anything alone. Together, they sound like the beginning of a sentence. The work is to learn what language it's written in. Rival stories must be told before any song is believed. Could a swarm of smaller objects cause the same microlensing pattern? The modelers try it. A swarm adds noise to many tiny fingerprints that don't align in time. Could a cold gas cloud bend light and nudge timing? It could, but it would also scatter certain colors and leave a fog on the spectrograph. The spectrograph stays clear. Could an unseen dim star with a wandering planet be the lens? The color would drift, faint but real. The color stays steady. Each rival leaves a trace that the instruments do not find. The dark traveler remains the neatest idea that makes the fewest promises. In the quiet hours, you can hear the rhythm of the hunt. Telescopes click through schedules. Arrays call out calibration rituals as if saying grace. Time syncs to a standard star. Noise floor is measured. Weather noted. A logbook reads like poetry that refuses drama. Clouds at 2:13. Clear by 2:40. Lensing candidate persists. Spectrograph stable. The style is kind because the sky is blunt. If you want the sky to speak, you must listen gently. The team also test themselves. Analysts who know the rumor of a lens might see a pattern that isn't there. So they blind the data. Files are shuffled and masked. Labels are removed. Code is audited by people who didn't write it. Results that survive blinding earn a star, not a celebration. Just a mark meaning, so far, so good. The habit keeps the dream from fogging the lens. As the datasets grow, so does the picture. A region of sky, once a vague smudge, sharpens into a slow corridor, a brushstroke of possibility. Inside it, the models show families of paths, some too fast to fit the timing, some too slow to cause the lensing shape, some just right. The phrase just right is not written. The file says compatible. But in minds that have stared at noisy maps for years, compatible feels like a warm hand on a cold rail. A question returns again and again. How heavy is the traveler? Weight is not measured directly here. It is inferred from how strong the lens is, how clean the timing smear, how stubborn the orbit tilt. Heavier means a steeper lens, a bolder smear, a tighter nudge. Lighter means whispers softer than breath. The next chapter will live with that weighing, but already the gears are in motion. New campaigns are planned. Longer stares at crowded star fields, higher cadence pulsar listening, refined tracking of select asteroid families that have proved patient. The plan is not a sprint. It is a season. Meanwhile, the room honors silence. There is no press call, no dramatic headline. The sky does not reward hurry, and the story is not a warning. If the traveler keeps its distant road, our lives proceed unchanged. The interest is knowledge, how gravity writes messages in motion and light. The joy is in catching that writing as it happens in real time, across a planet that sleeps while a few quiet people stay up to watch. You, listening now, might imagine the visuals the report describes for those who drift towards sleep. A dark canvas pricked with steady stars. Over it, a gentle veil slides, transparent, barely there, causing one star to swell and then soften. A second image, a rainbow bar with thin lines like strings on an instrument. For a handful of minutes, two lines lean, then straighten, as if the instrument breathed. A third, an ellipse traced in pale ink. At its closest point to the sun, the ink smudges a little in one direction and then dries. None of it is loud. All of it fits. As new nights arrive, the instruments return to their rituals. Engineers polish mirrors and clean sensors. Students practice the art of boring excellence, naming files carefully, logging the trivial, because later the trivial becomes the key. A junior analyst, who learned microlensing as diagrams on a classroom board, watches a real curve unfold across a real hour and whispers, without meaning to, "There you are." It is not triumph. It is recognition. Could these signatures belong to something else? The question remains welcome. It is asked at the end of every meeting, like a bell that dismisses class. A comet swarm? A pulsar glitch? A data pipeline hiccup? If a new rival arises, it will be tested with the same kindness and knives. That is the promise science makes to itself, to be careful enough that sleep comes easy, even when the answers are not here yet. When the night leans into dawn, the team steps outside. The air is cold. The sky fades from black to deep blue. The stars do what stars do, shine without wanting, vanish without complaint. No shrieks, no omens. Somewhere, far beyond, a comp traveler moves on, not near in the way that frightens, but near enough to leave these soft marks on our maps. The work has no final chord tonight. The servers were. The logs save. The instruments rest. The camera in your mind drifts back through the room. The telescope's tuned to starlight shifts. The spectrograph sniffing color. The timing arrays listening to clocks that never sleep. All of it feels like a bedtime riddle whose answer is simple. Mass moves, and the world around it moves in reply. If the traveler is there, it will keep writing in light and time until even the most skeptical reader nods. And if it is not, the same care will show that too. Either way, the night remains generous. The lights dim. Screens go dark. The hum lowers to a sigh. What remains is a feeling like a lantern held under a gentle veil, steady, warm, and unafraid. The sky is quiet but not empty. The clues are faint but not fickle. And as the last watcher closes the door, the room keeps its promise, to see the unseen, to listen to the softest whisper, and to leave the question open just long enough for the answer to arrive on its own. Mass speaks in motion. The traveler will not glow for us, but everything near it moves a little differently, and those differences add up like soft brushstrokes across the sky. If you want to weigh a shadow, you do not put it on a scale. You watch the world around it and learn the grammar of its pull. That is what the teams do now, gently, patiently, without the rush of headlines. They let gravity translate itself into light curves, timing smears, and tiny nudges that a steady hand can trace. The first tool is the microlensing curve, an honest arc that rises, rounds, and fades. From the shape alone, how fast it grows bright, how long it lingers, how softly it lets go, you can read three quiet things: how wide the lens appears, how quickly lens and star slide past one another on the sky, and how aligned their paths were at the peak. No equations are spoken aloud in the control room. The screens do the whispering. If the curve is sharp and brief, the lens could be smaller or moving faster. If it is wide and slow, the lens could be heavier or the motion gentler. Stack a dozen events that point to the same corridor, and a plausible mass range settles like dew on grass. Pulsar clocks add a second measure. Their beats are so regular that any delay feels like a bell rung behind a hill later than you expect. Softer than a shout, but impossible to ignore. The team measures how tall the delay is, how long it lasts, and what shape it draws as the traveler passes through the field of sight. A heavier hand on the pendulum makes a bolder smear. A lighter hand leaves a faint brush, gone almost at once. The numbers are small enough to hide in a sneeze, so the analysts do not run. They tiptoe. When the same style of smear appears in more than one pulsar, with timing that fits the lensing window, the weight class narrows another notch. Closer to home, the solar system itself becomes a scale. Asteroid families act as pebbles in a calm stream. A passing fortress of mass does not sweep them up. It only tweaks their paths. The tweak can be read as a shift in perihelion, the closest point to the sun, by a fraction too small to brag about. But honest science loves fractions. Modelers subtract sunlight's push, thermal effects, mutual tugs, and resonances with planets. Whatever nudges refuse to leave the room are invited to the chalkboard. If those nudges lean the same way for the same families during the same season that the sky's light curves change shape, the traveler's weight presses more clearly into the map. From these three scales, light, time, and orbit, a range takes shape. Not a single number. A warm band. On one side of the band is a heavy neutron star, dense and dark, but not silent if you listen in radio. On the other side is a small black hole, compact enough to erase light, simple enough to leave only gravity behind. The radio arrays listen hard for the faint breath of a neutron starbursts, pulses, tiny hints of a crust that cracks and recovers. The silence holds. The spectrographs search for the shy glow of a dim star that could be hiding in the lens. No color drift appears. The simplest reading remains. A compact, non-emissive mass, probably heavier than a neutron star wants to be, lighter than a giant might be. A small black hole wears that description like a well-fitted coat. But the room does not let joy outrun proof. Error is a character in this story. Not a villain, but a companion that keeps everyone honest. Clouds soften curves. Detectors warm and cool with the night. A cable that is not seated perfectly can turn patience into fiction. Human eyes love patterns the way rivers love valleys. They find them even where rock is flat. So the teams do the work that helps sleep arrive. They blind the datasets. They swap instruments. They give the same sky to different codes. They reorder the file so the person measuring the curve does not know which night was supposed to be special. When the weight band survives those trials, the room relaxes one notch, never two. Bias receives its own chair at the table. Confirmation bias, wanting the sky to say what you hope it says, can bend a line faster than gravity can. Selection bias favoring events that look clean can make your scale sing a tune the world never played. So the teens ask for help. Observatories that were not part of the rumor get a list of fields and a calendar of honest windows. Look here, on these dates. Tell us what you see, even if you see nothing. Nothing is an answer. Nothing tightens the band. Nothing keeps the weight from floating into wish. As numbers gather, the language stays soft. Heavier lenses produce stronger brightening, tighter time shifts, and bolder nudges. Lighter lenses whisper. The band that now rests on the table would make the traveler a few times the mass of the sun, perhaps up to several tens, depending on the exact speed and alignment. If it is small, it is the kind of black hole born when a single massive star collapsed and kept its silence. If it sits higher in the band, it could be the child of a merger, two remnants meeting in a crowded cluster, ringing space-time and then sailing on with a new weight and a new line through night. Both stories are ancient and lawful. Both would leave the same quiet ink in the sky we see now. Some in the room test a stranger idea. What if the traveler is not a black hole at all, but something we do not have a name for, a hidden fortress of mass that behaves like one but was born differently? The thought is held, then set down with care. New physics is a wonderful fire, but it should not be lit to warm every chilly dataset. The known story fits without forcing. The unknown will get its turn if the known fails. For now, gravity's plain tale is enough. Hope and fear live here too, but they are small and polite. Hope for being the first to weigh a truly rogue black hole this way. Fear of being tricked by noise in a patient disguise. There is also the lonely courage of being early, of saying perhaps into a quiet where no would be safer. The solution is the same as always. Share the light. The circle widens to more arrays, more telescopes, more pairs of careful hands. If the mass is real, it will show itself to new instruments that never heard the rumor. If it fades in that wider gaze, the band dissolves without shame. Either way, the sky wins and sleep returns. The models add a final layer, motion. Mass alone is not the full story. Speed and direction shape the signatures we read. A heavier traveler moving fast can mimic a lighter one moving slow. To separate them, the teams plan longer watches, patient stares that let the curve breathe from start to finish, and higher cadence timing, runs that catch the exact slope of a pulsar's wander. They also refine orbit tracking on a set of asteroid families that proved honest in earlier seasons. Each new slice of motion tightens the band as if a belt were being notched, not to squeeze, but to fit. By now, the chapter in your ear feels like a slow tide. The numbers rise and settle. The pictures on the wall, arcs, smears, ellipses, become familiar like faces. You may find your body matching the cadence. Breathe in on the brightening, breathe out on the fade. This is what weighing a shadow feels like. It is not dramatic. It does not ask for applause. It asks for a steady gaze, a trust in small effects, and the kind of patience that turns noise into meaning. When the meeting finally ends, no one claims a crown. Instead, a sentence is placed gently on the record. Combined analyses favor a compact, non-luminous mass in the stellar remnant range. A pause, then another. Best fit solutions prefer black hole interpretations under conservative priors. These words are bedtime words. They are not a trumpet. They are a hand on the rail as you descend the stairs to rest. Night returns. The telescopes open like eyes that do not tire. Somewhere beyond the planets, beyond even the icy beads that ring our system, a traveler moves on, unaware of being weighed by minds it will never meet. The scales we built light's bending, time slipping, orbits still keep feeling for its passing, until the band of weight is not a band anymore, but a number with a quiet heart. And when that number finally arrives, it will not roar. It will settle, the way dust settles after a sunbeam leaves a room soft, sure, and easy to love. The screens will dim. The servers will hum. People will walk out into the air and look up, not to see the traveler know I will, but to feel the comfort that comes when a mystery yields a single clear word. The sky will look unchanged. Yet inside that calm, a shadow will have gained a weight you can name, and the naming will make the night feel closer, kinder, and more true, like a soft glow at the edge of sleep, carrying a question that refuses to vanish and a promise that something hidden is still quietly speaking. The folder opens with a soft chime, like a door eased inward so it will not echo. Inside, a report that looks ordinary from far away and stranger the closer you lean. Lines cross-hatched with black. Margins full of pencil ghosts, dates, initials, arrows that start and stop. A calm voice reads without hurry. This is not the moment for drama. It is the moment for careful light in a museum at night, when even footsteps know to be gentle. On the first sealed page, the paragraphs march in order until a gap appears like missing teeth. Between two plain sentences, a block of silence hides what someone once wrote. A note in the margin remains. Pattern persists. See timing compendium. The compendium number is visible. The compendium itself is absent. Across the gap, another sentence resumes in the same calm tone. Further analysis deferred pending external confirmation. The black ink is not a shout of secrecy. It's a blanket pulled up to keep a fragile idea from catching cold. The narrator inside the report, yes, reports have a mood, keeps the science simple. It names a new signal with small words. Pulsar timing anomalies, faint and repeating in a way that suggests a rhythm not born of noise. Timing arrays, scattered like a field of ears across Earth, heard a smear in more than one lighthouse star. The slips were small. The pattern grew only when months were laid end to end like tiles. A graph, partly redacted, shows thin blue lines leaving their gray comfort and coming back again. In the margin, a pencil hand writes one word, harbinger. The word appears once and then disappears behind black ink, as if the page itself took a breath and decided to wait. What is a harbinger here? Not doom? Not omen in the dramatic sense. A harbinger is only a messenger that arrives before the letter, a knock before a voice. If a compact traveler crossed a wide corridor of sky, it could press down on the timing of several pulsars at once, not by force, but by geometry space curving, clocks agreeing in their brief disagreement. The sealed pages imply such agreement. They do not claim it. The difference matters. Caution is a form of care. Another page turns. The black rectangles sit like quiet stones in a stream. Water moves around them. You can still cross. The sections that remain unsealed explain why early findings sleep behind ink. A premature prophecy can bend the world in unhelpful ways. Telescope time shifts, not toward better answers, but toward louder questions. Headlines arrive before context does. People fear what they do not need to fear, and doubt what deserves patience. So the report holds its breath. It asks for one more season of listening, one more audit of the spectrographs, one more pass through the comet and meteor logs, to see whether the soft pattern repeats where it should and refuses where it shouldn't. In a side column, small text lists test like beads on a string. Cross-array calibration, solar wind modeling, interstellar plasma corrections, detector temperature drift, software blinding, independent code paths checked against the same raw pulses. Each bead is a way to ask, is this us or is this the sky? The sealed sections remove the most tempting figures. The unsealed sections keep the habits that make sleep possible. A caption beneath a blanked figure still reads, residuals cohere across instruments to within expectable error. Anomalous phase lags align with lensing windows. It's a lullaby of restraint. The pages also explain redaction as a timeline tool. Not everything is hidden forever. Some sections carry dates stamped in soft gray. Release on verification. Release on partner review. The ink is a bridge, not a wall. When another array can reproduce the pattern without knowing where to look, when a telescope that never heard the rumor sees the same gentle curve in starlight, then lines will be lifted like museum curtains at morning. It is a promise quietly made to the future. A smaller paragraph, left intact, describes the room where such choices happen. There is a long table. There are cups with cooling rings that look like tiny nebulae on paper. The people at the table are not villains guarding treasure. They are gardeners shielding a new sprout. One remembers a false alarm from years ago. The way graphs lined up for a week, then unraveled when a bent connector was found in a rack no one had touched in months. Another remembers the weight of excitement when a comet's tail looked strange until someone shared a wind model that made it ordinary again. They all remember the feeling of being watched by hope and by the clock. The sealed pages return to pulsars because clocks comfort truth. Imagine a field of metronomes set to tick in unison. A passing hand, soft as breath, slows 3 by the tiniest fraction, delays their tick so slightly that a single ear would miss it. but a recording over many hours would not. If the same hand moved across the field, the smears in time would drift from one cluster of metronomes to another. That drift is the shape the report hints at, a tidy wave of discrepancy matching the corridor, where lensing events bloomed and faded. The figure that shows this is mostly black ink. The caption survives. Phase drift consistent with a single compact lens transiting line-of-sight arc. See Appendix B for priors. Appendix B is sealed. The caption is enough to keep the mind awake, but not afraid. One paragraph, narrow and spare, speaks to language. The word harbinger, used once and then hidden, is flagged with a gentle admonition. Words carry weather. Harbinger can bring a storm it doesn't mean. The team suggests alternatives that tread softly. Messenger, candidate, signal. The mood of the document stays unhurried. It treats the sky the way you would treat an old friend who knocks late, glad to see them. Careful to make space, mindful not to read the whole story from their first hello. The sealed pages also point outward, beyond the clocks, toward the broader map. An unredacted sentence mentions galaxy clusters and filaments like roads between cities of stars. It suggests that when timing patterns appear, they should be checked against these larger structures, the hidden scaffolding where gravity is strongest, where travelers are most likely to wander. Another line, only partly hidden, mentions solar wind threads, how they curl around magnetic fields and can masquerade as timing noise. The team shows how they subtracted those curls, how the left-behind rhythm did not dissolve. The punctuation is modest. It says, in effect, we are cleaning the glass before deciding what the reflection means. Walking through the pages feels like walking through a museum late. Paintings hang with small lights above them. Some are veiled, labeled under restoration. Others are open, their colors quiet and strong. The silence in such a place is not empty. It is protective. You hear your own breath and the soft tick of a guard's watch. The sealed pages borrow that hush. They protect not the people in the room but the idea itself, until the idea can stand without being knocked over by the wind. A reader might wonder, did the sealed pages hint at a reply from space and organized rhythm, a drumbeat too subtle for talk, too steady for chance? Or were they only the careful thought of scientists who know how easy it is to be fooled by a pattern one wants to see? The report answers the only way honest work can. Both are possible. The sealed figures look promising enough to guard. The unsealed steps are strong enough to show. The next observations will be decisive in their own quiet way. If the pattern belongs to a traveler, it will recur where the model says it should. If it belongs to noise, the next season will teach that lesson just as gently. Here and there, the pages let the human voice through. A comment initialed and dated reads, "Let's not say more than we can sleep with." Another, in tidy handwriting, says, "Keep the public path ready. Comfort first. Clarity, always." Someone has added a small sketch of a lamp behind a curved piece of glass. The lamp glows brighter in the drawing's center, softer at the edges. Beneath it, 2 words, Einstein's lens. Even in secrecy, there is teaching. Especially in secrecy, there must be trust. The report remembers the world beyond the lab, the one under real stars. It speaks of how to share a quiet truth without sparking loud fear. A rogue black hole passing at the distances modeled here cannot unmake planets. It can nudge a comet's trajectory. It can thin a meteor stream or thicken it. It can bend starlight for a few patient hours. These are not reasons to panic. They are reasons to listen. One paragraph, unsealed by design, is written for that listening. A note that explains distance, orbit, and scale in words a tired mind can hold. It is a promise that the first duty of any announcement is to help people rest. Later, the sealed pages grow fewer. The story has less to hide and more to repeat with care. There is a summary box, gray, quiet, almost shy, that says, Candidate signal detected in pulsar timing. Coherence across arrays under review. Lensing windows correlate within conservative priors. Independent verification in progress. No trumpet. No hush threat. Just the soft architecture of a bridge being built between a secret and a statement. The last sealed leaf holds a single black bar over a coordinate. The rest is ordinary. Observation scheduling, instrument maintenance, a list of telescopes that promise to watch when the sky turned that way again. The black bar matters because coordinates focus eyes. Too many eyes too soon can tangle the work. The unsealed parts matter because they show the work shape, repetition, variety, patience. It feels like the end of a gentle lesson and the start of a longer walk. When the folder closes, the room returns. Monitors glow in soft rectangles. Someone stretches, someone stirs a cup, someone writes an email that begins, "Thank you for checking our math." Outside, the building's glass face holds the night like a calm pond. In that reflection, a moon, a few bright stars, the quiet lanes of traffic. Nothing in your eye declares a messenger is passing. Yet the sealed pages have taught your ear to hear a softer music, clocks agreeing where they shouldn't, starlight bowing by a breath, instruments that hum like monks at prayer. Secrecy, in this telling, is not a lock. It is a hand over a candle while the door is open and a breeze is moving through the hall. The candle is not the answer itself. It is the ability to see the answer when it comes. The hand will lift when the room is still, when confirmation arrives from far away, from instruments that never learned the rumor, from nights that were cloudy in one place and clear in another. Then the lines will sharpen. The captions will lengthen. The word erased will return, perhaps changed to something calmer. For now, the sealed pages rest inside their folder like stones warmed by day and cooling in evening air. The story they keep is not sensational. It is steady, a new signal, modest and careful, maybe a messenger, maybe not, held with the same respect given to old truths. Somewhere beyond the window, the sky keeps its slow grammar. Galaxy clusters shape roads. Solar wind threads curl and uncurl. A traveler, if it is there, moves across the broader map, leaving gentle marks that almost no one sees. The lights dim. A door clicks. The building settles. The report sleeps in its drawer like a tide pulled back, waiting. And as the night drifts over rooftops and deserts and seas, the feeling that lingers is not urgency, but wonder and awareness that just beyond the edge of what can be said aloud, a rhythm may be forming in the dark, and in that rhythm, something patient is very softly beginning to speak. The camera of the mind lifts above the Milky Way as if rising on quiet wind. Our spiral becomes a silver pinwheel, thin as a coin, floating in a dark sea. Beyond it, other spirals glow like lanterns. Between them stretches not emptiness, but a faint architecture, filaments and bridges that the eye can barely hold. This is the larger map, the hidden scaffold called the cosmic web. Along these roads, mass travels. Along these roads, a road can drift for ages, guided by gravity's softest hand. Imagine a web spun from darkness itself. The threads are made of matter we cannot see, yet we feel their pull in everything that moves. Galaxies are the lanterns that hang on those threads. Clusters are the knots where many threads meet. If you could run your finger along a filament, you would find a slope so gentle it feels like level ground, until a million years pass and you realize you have been walking downhill the whole time. A compact traveler, small as black holes go, obeys these slopes without hurry. It does not choose the path. The path chooses it. Astronomers call the web large-scale structure, and the name fits like a whisper. On the largest scales, the universe looks like foam, bright walls and dark voids. Sheets and tunnels, a labyrinth of gravity's design. Luminous matter stars, gas, dust traces only part of it. The rest is dark matter, a hidden mass that does not glow or scatter light, but bends space with steady patience. Where the web tightens, galaxies gather. Where it loosens, galaxies thin. A rogue black hole entering a filament feels a tide that is not water but geometry. The tide guides. The traveler glides. Close your eyes and picture the motion as a slow river. At each bend, faint currents merge, carrying the traveler toward deeper basins, the outskirts of clusters, the halos that surround galaxies like invisible fog. These halos are fortresses of mass too, not walls, just thickness. They cradle stars, catch wayward gas, turn the routes of wanderers by degrees. So small you would miss them in a single life. But the traveler has all the time in the world. A degree here, a degree there, and an ancient line reshapes itself into a new arc across billions of miles. The report's language, calm as always, calls these kinetic tides. It means that motion itself creates patterns, that streams of stars and remnants share lanes like cars slipping into the same highway. In crowded regions near cluster streams cross. Collisions of galaxies in the deep past leave behind trails of torn stars like ribbons. Those ribbons become roads too. A compact traveler drifting through them can surf a tidal leftover, coasting along a current that was born when two giants brushed glancing shoulders eons ago. The mind's camera descends into one such lane. The stars are thin here, but they are faithful. They form a luminous haze, a faint arch. The lane is wide, but its center draws. Our traveler slides across it like a skater on a frozen river at night. No sound, no light. Only the way nearby starlight bends. Only the way distant clocks stutter and recover when the traveler's gravity passes through their sight. From our angle, far away and patient, the motion looks simple. A line through darkness, a brush, stroke across the sky. If this is the route, who built it? Not hands, not intentions. The web is the fossil of the early universe, shaped by tiny ripples that grew under gravity's rule. Over time, gas fell into the ripples, lit them with stars, and turned them into lantern strings. Collisions, galaxies merging, clusters dancing a slow waltz etched deeper grooves. The pattern we see now is a record of long-ago weather. A rogue black hole does not read the record. It becomes a dot on it, faithful to curves written before the sun formed. The report describes how to test this picture without waking fear. You look for hints that match the web. For example, a sequence of microlensing events that appear not at random but along a gentle arc matching a known filament. Or a cluster of timing smears and pulsars whose lines of sight graze the same large-scale lane. Or a slight bias in the motion of distant halo stars, as if a quiet tide were passing under them. None of these would be dramatic. All of them together would whisper the same word the web loves: coherence. Coherence is not perfection. Roads between galaxies are not tidy highways with painted lines. They are braided paths. Sometimes the traveler drifts into a side stream and loops for a while, circling a halo. Sometimes it crosses a star stream at an angle that leaves no mark anyone can measure. Sometimes, rarely, it skims gas dense enough to warm. Then it might flash in X-rays for a breath, a spark on a river before darkness returns. The report files this spark under possible but unlikely. The kind of lane we are mapping here is thin and clean. It carries motion, not fire. As we drift higher in the mind's view, the web's roads reveal long basins, the cluster regions. A cluster is a county of galaxies, hundreds held in one another's gravity. In its center, a supermassive black hole rules a bright city. On its rim, Smaller travelers like ours ride the currents like driftwood the tide forgot. The word fortress of mass fits these rims too. They do not block. They shape. A passerby near the rim feels a gentle invitation that becomes destiny over hundreds of millions of miles. Could the traveler be following a forbiddance pattern, a route etched by ancient collisions? The phrase forbiddance here only means unexpected by chance. The web loves order where our eyes expect chaos. A brushstroke repeated across decades of lensing fields, arcing along the edge of a known filament, would be such a pattern. It would not prove a plan. It would prove a path older than us. The beauty is that the same path that still moves black holes also once moved clouds that became galaxies, and dust that became stars, and carbon that became ink and thought. Instruments on Earth and in orbit can listen for these roads even while you sleep. Deep surveys map galaxy positions by the millions, turning the sky into a honeycomb of light and silence. Weak lensing maps where many tiny smears in many faint galaxies are stacked reveal the web's gentle gravity the way frost reveals breath on a cold morning. Overlay on that map the places where microlensing events cluster, the fields where pulsar clocks have smeared in agreement, the arcs where asteroid perihelia lean by a whisper. If the layers stack with grace, if the lanes of darkness and the whispers of motion align, the road becomes visible not to eyes, but to reason. The narrator pauses here, the way a guide pauses on a cliff path, to let you see the valley. The words return to softness, luminous haze, endless night, soft glow tracing hidden roads. It is not art for its own sake. It is language designed for rest. Because the truth is soothing, the traveler does not aim for us. It is a messenger of structure, not a letter of warning. It carries no will. It carries a story about the shape of everything, written in a script only patient tools can read. Still, wonder invites a question. Where could such roads lead next? A filament might carry the traveler toward a dwarf galaxy's halo, where star streams loop like ribbons left out in wind. It might skim the outskirts of a satellite galaxy, one of the small companions that circle the Milky Way, and leave a subtle drift in the orbits of its most fragile clusters. It might cross the wake of an old collision and ride it like a long swell, the way a ship catches a far ocean's memory. None of these paths threaten planets. All of them teach. There is a humility in this chapter's science. The web weaves the universe, but we only see it in traces. We see it when galaxies fall along lines, when starlight bends around nothing we can name, when clocks misbehave together for a few weeks and then grow exact again. We infer the roads from where travelers tend to go. We confirm them by watching long enough for chance to confess pattern. If the traveler is riding a filament, we will know it not by a signpost, but by that gentle repetition, that quiet coherence, appearing in places the map says it should. Underneath the method lies a feeling that is older than telescopes, awe. It rises not from danger, but from recognition. Our small blue world circles one star in one arm of one galaxy, yet gravity writes its sentences across all the arms and all the galaxies at once. To know even a letter of that sentence is to feel less alone. The rogue, in this telling, is not a stray. It is a pilgrim moving along a road that was laid down when the first light broke free. The mind's camera falls back toward the Milky Way now, toward the familiar scrawl of Orion and the thin path of the ecliptic. The instruments return to their hum. On a screen, a new weak lensing map blooms with faint contours. On another, a list of pulsar beats scrolls like rain. Someone draws a small curve in pencil, matching it to a filament traced last year. Someone else yawns, saves a file, and turns off a lamp. The work is slow on purpose. The night prefers it that way. The chapter ends the way a road does when fog comes in no wall, just a soft edge. The web remains in place whether we look or not. The traveler, If it is there, keeps to its lane without knowing lanes exist. And we, lantern bearers on a small world, listen for the slightest bend in light, the faintest smudge in time, the thinnest tilt in orbit, until the route across the larger map glows in outline. The glow fades into the horizon, but in its fading, it carries a question that lingers in every watcher's mind. What other hidden roads are waiting, just beyond the limit of sight, for a patient eye to learn their curve? Breathe in. The sky is large. Our world is small and steady. When people hear black hole, the mind can sprint to edges and alarms. But space has room the way oceans have room, vast, layered, full of distances that calm the heart. This chapter is about distance and scale, about what near means in a universe where light can take ages to cross a map. It is about why a drifting shadow, even one heavy with gravity, need not trouble the dance we live inside every day. Start with a picture you already know. The solar system as a family table. The sun sits at the center like a warm lamp. The planets circle on steady paths, each with its own rhythm. Mercury quick and close. Venus calm and bright. Earth with its moon in tow, both humming along a clear lane. Out past Mars, the belt of stones. Farther still, the giants Jupiter and Saturn, then Uranus and Neptune's slow guardians near the rim. Beyond them, the dim realm of icy bodies, and farther out, the great cloud where comets sleep in a cradle of silence. Gravity holds this family together. Each planet's orbit is an ellipse, almost a circle, drawn by the steady pull of the sun. After billions of years, only stable patterns remain. Fragile paths get weeded out by time. What lasts is resilient. That is why astronomers trust these orbits. They have survived the universe's long test. Now place our unknown traveler far outside those bright lanes. Near, in everyday talk, means across a room, across a city, across a country. Near, in this story, means something like across the outer yard of a palace you cannot see, all of it silent, all of it stretched across distances that turn hours into centuries. A past that is close in cosmic terms can still be far beyond where planets play. Think millions and billions of miles. Think a space so wide you could line up the orbits of worlds inside it and still have room. What happens when a compact object glides through that far dark? Not drama, not a tearing of orbits. Gravity is strong up close and gentle far away. At distance, it acts like a soft tide, the kind that moves a sleeping boat by an inch and then returns it. A traveler could tug on loose things at the edge, a cold comet. Kernel might lean, a trail of dust might thin or thicken along its stream. But the main dance, the planets, their moons, the steady path of Earth keeps tempo. The sun's pull is the drum. A distant passerby is only a faint breeze. Certain words help, and we will keep them simple. Trajectory, the line a thing takes through space. Perihelion, the closest the path comes to the sun. Orbit model, a careful forecast of where a body goes next, based on the forces we know. Solar wind, a stream of charged particles that flows from the sun, touching magnetic fields like a bow on strings. These terms sound big, but they form a lullaby when said slowly. They remind us that motion has rules, and the rules are kind to systems that have lasted this long. Consider asteroids. Many circle in families. A wide, distant nudge might move a family's perihelion by a whisper over many seasons. The shift is measured in small angles, fractions of degrees, so slight you could blink and miss it on a chart. Consider comets in the deep freeze. A passing push might send a few on a journey inward that takes thousands of years. The earliest sign on Earth would not be a shout in the sky. It would be a later generation's meteor night arriving a day early. Thin silver lines stitched across darkness like quiet thread. This is not danger. This is the sky's handwriting making one extra stroke. Now turn the lamp toward Earth. Our orbit is strong because it is simple. Sun pulls, Earth falls around it, momentum carries, year repeats. To disturb that dance, passerby would need to come very close, almost within the lanes where planets live. The evidence and models in our quiet file never suggest that. They trace a corridor across the outer garden, not a dive through the table where we sit. The result is comfort. We are small, but we are well seated. What would count as an omen? Then, and what is only rumor? An omen, in science's careful voice, is a pattern that repeats where and when physics predicts it should. Suppose instruments see a microlensing curve in a certain field. Then, some months later, a matching timing smear in pulsars along that same arc. And across seasons, a tiny lean in the perihelia of a few carefully chosen asteroids. Suppose the sizes of those signals fit one traveler moving along one path. That is an omen in the quiet sense, not a warning of harm, a sign of presence. Rumor is different. Rumor is a single odd light, a single loud night, a graph without companions. Rumor fades when checked. Omen grows when measured. Scale brings more comfort. Think of Jupiter, the great planet that shepherds comets with its wide gravity and keeps a kind of watch near the middle lanes. Its influence is real and steady. A distant passerby's tug must compete with that. Mostly, it cannot. The giants and the sun make a shield of balance, not a wall, but a deep valley of gravity that keeps the planet snug. A traveler across the outer yard can sketch the dust at the edge. It cannot reach the lamp at the center or the chairs around it. The chapter's promise is not only safety, it is clarity. The file's tone, like a good guide, trades fear for detail. It offers pictures for sleepy minds. Picture the solar system as a mobile hanging in a quiet room. The wires are strong. The pieces balance each other. A door opens down the hall. A gentle puff of air arrives. The mobile stirs, then settles where it began. Now picture the same mobile with a thin curtain moving nearby. The curtain is the traveler's tide. The mobile knows the curtain is there only by a whisper of motion in its outer threads. The center does not sway. Instruments help keep the difference straight. Telescopes watch for starlight bending microlensing curves that swell and smooth away. Spectrographs read tiny color shifts when light takes a longer route. Timing arrays listen for clocks that slip and steady. Orbit solvers track how small bodies keep their promises. When all of these are quiet near Earth, but only whisper out where the dark is deep, we sleep well. When they whisper together along a path that never crosses our lanes, we learn without worry. Some may ask gently, could the traveler wake if it fed, if it met a cloud and warmed? Yes, but the odds are small in such thin regions. And even then, wake means a brief glimmer far away, like a match seen across a lake. If anything, a small flare would help confirm the path. It would be a note, not a siren. Another question, also welcome. If a meteor shower comes early this year, is that the sign? Not by itself. Meteors are many stories braided together: parent comets, sunlight pressure, planetary nudges, plane counting errors. One early night is weather. A decade of early nights that match a model tide is climate. Omen lives in climate. Rumor lives in weather. This is why the watchers keep long logs and love error bars like fence posts. They mark a field where honest patterns can grow. You might wonder what you can do, listening in the dark. Not much is required, only calm watching if the sky is clear. If a long-period comet appears in years to come, moving with a tilt the models predicted, step outside and look. See it not as threat, but as letter. See the tail as writing. Gravity passed here. The same gravity that keeps your feet on the ground. And the moon in its gentle loop also draws ink across the universe in slow strokes. We are reading the strokes. We are not standing in their way. So the lesson settles. Near in space is not near as we feel it on a street. The traveler moves across a high, distant balcony of the solar system. The planets keep their steps. The moon keeps her tide. If there is a reply to this visitor, it will be soft and beautiful. A few more meteors one autumn, a shy comet in a northern dawn, a subtle glow of agreement across instruments that whisper to each other in numbers while the world sleeps. The room darkens. The hum of servers becomes a low ocean. Charts fold closed. On the horizon, morning leans but does not arrive yet. You breathe, and the idea becomes easy to hold. We live inside a balanced dance. A passing shadow, far beyond. The warm lamp can touch the edge of the room and leave again without shifting the table where we sit. The quiet remains. The stars keep their places. And somewhere out past the last familiar ring, a traveler continues on its pull gentle at our distance. Its message written not in fear, but in the soft grammar of the night. Imagine a field of clocks spread across the sky. Some are near, most are far. All are steadier than any machine we build on Earth. Each is a pulsar, a dead star spinning with fierce order, sweeping radio beams like lighthouse arms. Every turn sends a tick across space. Those ticks cross voids, cross nebulae, cross the thin wind of our own sun, and finally arrive at our antennas as small, perfect beats. When the universe is quiet, the pattern is peace itself. Tick, tick, tick. So regular that timekeepers could set their work by it. When something heavy brushes the path, something like a compact traveler moving across our line of sight, the pattern slips. Not a shout, a smear. The metronome falters for a moment, then finds its rhythm again. The listening field is built to hear that. On the ground, the listening field looks like a map of dishes and arrays. Some are single, white bowls tilted toward a patch of night. Others are forests of metal lines, faced to act as one ear. They live on mountains and in deserts, under skies that forgive and remember. Engineers tune them as bakers tend ovens checking temperature, clearing dust, adjusting recipe notes that only make sense after midnight. When an array points to a pulsar, the signal arrives as a river of radio. Software separates the wave from noise and writes the time of each pulse in clean ink. The act feels simple. The math beneath it is deep and kind. To understand the listening field, it helps to hold a picture in your mind. A grid of pulses scrolling past. Each column is a pulsar. Each row is a day. In calm times, the grid resembles a woven cloth with no snags. When the traveler glides between us and one part of that cloth, the weave changes for a breath. A handful of columns drift, late by a tiny fraction, early by a tiny fraction, then return to true. The drift rolls across the grid like a soft shadow. Analysts do not cheer when they see it. They test the weave for knots, solar wind gusts, interstellar plasma, instrument drift, software bias, human hope. What remains after those knots are pulled is the music we came to hear. The chapter slows to explain why pulsars make such honest clocks. They are neutron stars cores of collapsed giants, crushed so tightly that a teaspoon of them would weigh mountains. Their magnetic fields are fierce. Their beams sweep with metronome grace, because their cores spin with the stability of a skater who holds their arms just so. Millisecond pulsars are the best clocks of all. Old, spun up by past companions, they turn hundreds of times a second and barely change. If they do change, it is either because they glitched, an internal hiccup we catalog and know, or because space between them and us changed the way time flows for a while. The listening field is tuned to that second story. Noise has many costumes, so the field teaches itself to listen past them. The sun exhales. The solar wind swells and thins. That wind can add delays to radio waves, like fog adding gray to a street lamp. Models subtracted. Interstellar plasma wiggles like heat over a road. Careful filters calm that wave. Earth's own clock, the one we use to measure all others, can drift. The arrays cross-check with atomic time to keep their ruler honest. Even the shape of the antennas changes with temperature. Thermal logs let software bend the hardware back mathematically to where it should have been. If, after all that, a coordinated smear remains, it earns a small star and a date in the margin. The narrative of the room is gentle. A student reads a waterfall plot, the colored stripes that show pulse strength over time, and sees a faint bow. The bow is small, not beautiful at first glance. She marks it anyway, then runs the code that hides labels and mixes files, so she, and everyone else, forgets which night is which. The bow survives blinding. A second array, in a different country, with different weather and different cables and a different sky overhead, reports a matching bow a week later. A third array, tuned to a different wavelength, finds the same strain breathing through its data. The language in the logbook is a lullaby of care. Residuals persist under diverse calibration. Cross-array coherence noted. The listening field is not only about single ticks. Over years, the arrays also search for a background tiny time warps caused by many massive things far away. A choir of whispers that make clocks agree in their disagreement. That search is slow and separate. Our traveler is faster. A local brush that makes a handful of clocks smear for weeks or months, then relent. The two hunts share tools, but not tempo. In this chapter, we stay with the brush. The science remains at bedtime scale simple, exact, kind. A passing mass changes the path that radio waves take. Path changes become time changes. Time changes appear as residuals, differences between when a pulse should arrive and when it does. If the traveler crosses a corridor seen by several pulsars, their residuals sway together in a pattern that follows the traveler's glide. The arrays fit that sway with models. Heavier lenses make taller residuals. Slower lenses make longer ones. Add constraints from microlensing curves in the same sky, and the mass range tightens. Add orbit nudges from asteroid families, and the corridor narrows. Light, motion, and time begin to rhyme. Error bars guard every noun. Clouds, cable microbends, seasonal ionospheric moods, they all get a seat at the table. Teams trade data like musicians trading themes, each one trying to break the other's melody. In some runs, the pattern softens and goes. In others, it holds shape like a ripple that won't smooth flat. The arrays are connected by humans who write emails that begin with caution, maybe, and could you try? They attach figures with captions that read, compatible with compact lens. Attribution unproven. In these rooms, pride lives far behind patience. Now the voice turns to visuals meant for those falling asleep. Picture a line of metronomes across a quiet stage, each clicking in time. A hand passes in front not touching, simply moving through the air, and 3 metronomes slow by the tiniest amount, then quicken to rejoin the rest. If you watched a single metronome, you might call it a quirk. If you watched a line, you would see a wave move. The listening field is the camera that holds the whole line in view. The arrays also remember that pulsars are actors with their own moods. Some glitch sudden jumps in spin that look like someone tugged the second hand. The field knows those faces and sets them aside. Some pulsars wander slowly over years. Those are not chosen for delicate work. The ones we keep are the monks of the sky, the steady ones whose small changes usually have external causes. Their discipline becomes our instrument. Calibration rituals, repeated so gently they feel like prayer, anchor the work. Before each observation, the arrays listen to a standard source to measure the day's hearing. They step through gain settings, test phase consistency, record the air's humidity, the sun's altitude, the state of the ionosphere. They log everything trivial because, later, the trivial will explain a mystery or prove that it isn't one. In the margins, notes appear that feel human and kind. Teen-year console keep lid on. Ant 5 squeaks. Re-grease tomorrow. Please label figs with UTC. When patterns survive ritual and blinding, the field lets itself speculate, but softly. If the smear tracked across 3 pulsars that sit along the edge of the same lensing corridor, and if the timing of that smear matches the window when a microlensing curve rose and fell in that corridor, then a traveler moving at a modest speed with a small black hole mass becomes a tidy fit. The word fit matters, not proof. The team prepares predictions instead of press. They write down which pulsars should wobble next, which fields should swell under lensing next season, which asteroid families should lean a whisper more. Prediction is the string that turns balloons into a shape you can draw. Rival stories still crowd the door. Could a wandering cloud of ionized gas thin as a thought, wide as a thought, wide as a continent, have drifted through the line of sight and mimicked the smear? The arrays check dispersion measures, the way different radio colors arrive at different times. A gas cloud would tilt those colors. The data do not tilt. Could a timing standard error have crept into the shared clock and nibbled at several pulsars at once? The arrays cross with independent time sources. The nibble goes away. The smear remains. Could the pulsars themselves have conspired, by chance, to wander in the same way at the same time? Probability offers a shrug that feels like no. The listening field reaches beyond radio too. A small team checks whether any faint X-ray glow blinked in the same corridor. Unlikely, but worth a look. Another team compares the timing smear with solar wind reconstructions. If a coronal mass ejection surged through the heliosphere, it could mask as fate. The reconstructions and the smear do not rhyme. The traveler hypothesis keeps its seat, not at the head of the table, not yet, but near the center, among friends. There is a human chapter tucked inside this chapter, the way nights pass. Someone naps in a chair with a jacket over their face while a script crawls across a terminal. Someone else stares at a scatterplot until the dots become intentions and then remembers to stand and breathe. At dawn, the room empties into cold air. A few stars linger low. The first birds guess at daylight. The building hum fades the way a tide fades when you walk up the beach. In pockets and backpacks, notebooks ride home, their pages holding small sentences that feel larger than they look. JAO 437 late by 120 NS. Matches window. PTRB confirmed shape. DM stable. Next week, same corridor. The chapter returns to gentleness because the sky prefers it. If the clocks agree, the traveler has brushed the edges of our map. If they don't, the world is still generous. Either way, the act of listening turns chaos into craft. It teaches how to separate rumor from omen. Rumor is a single clock slipping on a single night. Omen is several clocks slipping in harmony when and where a model said they would. The field does not ask for applause. It asks for another hour, another clean run, another night of quiet antennas pointed at the oldest lighthouses we know. Before the lights dim, someone writes the day's summary on a board. A few lines, a few arrows, 3 boxes labeled light, time, and orbit, with a soft circle drawn where they overlap. In that circle, a word that has grown from a whisper into a careful voice. Candidate. The word is enough to keep the teams awake and to let them sleep. It leaves room for no, room for yes, room for the patient middle where science lives most of its life. Step outside with them for a moment. The wind is small. The dawn is not here yet. Above the antenna fields, Jupiter shines, and a handful of winter stars fade toward day. Somewhere beyond what you can see, a compact traveler crosses a lane that instruments have traced, but eyes cannot. The clocks in the sky keep their beat. For a while they smudge, the way a heartbeat can flutter and then settle. You listen, not with ears, but with images and numbers and trust. The room's close. The array's idle. The hum lowers to a sigh. The listening field does not sleep. It rests. And in that rest, the universe keeps speaking in a language we are only now learning to read ticks and smears. Curves and fades, a soft grammar written across the night. The answers do not hurry. The doubts do not vanish. Yet the longer we listen, the clearer the shape becomes, as if the silence itself were lifting a veil, and somewhere within that lifting, a hidden motion waits, still gentle, still passing, still just beyond the edge of sound. The map begins as a smudge, a thought, a whisper of lines that may or may not connect. Starlight bows by a breath here, a clock smear fades there. An asteroid's path leans the way a reed leans when a quiet current passes by. None of these alone are more than weather. Together, they start to sketch a shape. The room grows still. Someone traces a fingertip across the screen, not to touch the stars, but to feel where the curve wants to go. A trajectory emerges, not a highway, not a thread, just a thin thread through night. Imagine a slow animation described for closed eyes. The celestial dome darkens to a deep blue-black, a soft glow on the horizon. Over that darkness, faint arcs appear, pale as chalk on velvet. Each arc is a possibility drawn from numbers, the speed inferred from microlensing curves, the direction suggested by pulsar timing smears, the tilt hinted by perihelion shifts in a few honest asteroid families. One arc fades. Another lingers. A third overlaps the second like a gentle braid. Where several arcs agree, the screen breathes a little brighter. There, not a point, but a corridor. Not a destination, a passage. Inside the room, no one rushes. A traveler with no light gives you time to think. They name the corridor simply a line through night and set about making it real. First come the windows. Dates and angles when the traveler's brush could graze a particular field of stars. These are not alarms. They are invitations. If the line is true, a handful of microlensing events should appear in that field during those dates, swelling and then softening like a wave that knows where the shore will be. If the line is false, the field will remain ordinary, and the line will dissolve into a kind of beautiful nothing. Either way, sleep stays easy. Next, the team marks perihelion windows for small bodies we know well. Orbits are O's. They keep their promises, unless something honest makes them renegotiate. Select asteroid families, carefully chosen for their calm, are watched for tiny changes in the point, where they come closest to the sun. A drift of a fraction of a degree in the same direction others drifted before would rhyme with the corridor. A drift in the opposite direction would say the corridor is a daydream. The plan is gentle. Continue what we already do, but listen harder where the map suggests a whisper. The Oort cloud returns like a memory of winter. It is not a wall. It is a garden, a cradle of silence where countless comet seeds sleep in a luminous haze too faint to see. The line through night does not dip into the warm lanes of planets. It skims the outer garden where gravity is a soft tide. If the traveler's real, the first visible reply will not be danger. It will be a handful of long-period comets stirred from sleep. Not a storm, not a swarm, not fire in every sky, just a modest spray across the next centuries. Like new punctuation at the edge of a sentence, the solar system has been writing for ages. The narration returns to images, a bedtime grammar. Picture the outer dark as a slow-moving pond. At the far edge, a leaf trembles, turns slightly, then drifts back to stillness. That leaf is a comet. The pond is space. The breeze you do not feel is a fortress of mass gliding by, too distant to tilt the planets, close enough to touch the lightest things. Further in, meteors stitch thin silver lines across autumn nights. Maybe, in a future year, the the stitching begins a day earlier than your calendar remembers. That early lace is not an omen of harm. It is a quiet "we heard you." Timing matters, so the map gains seasons. The team arranges windows like soft beads on thread, nights when certain star fields rise at dark angles, weeks when chosen pulsars sit where the corridor crosses their lines of sight, months when sunlight and shadow make perihelion measurements cleanest. A viewer would only see a schedule. A listener hears a rhythm: watch here, pause, watch there, breathe. If the traveler follows the line, its brush should paint these windows with the faintest color. If it does not, the windows close behind us like late-night doors, softly, with thanks. Perihelion gets a clearer voice. The word sounds like a spell, but it is only geometry, the point of closest pass to the sun. An orbit is an ellipse that repeats. Tiny nudges change the ellipse a little each time, like handwriting that learns a new curve. In the models, the traveler's tide would tend to pull several families in the same lean across a few cycles. The lean is not a push. You would not feel it in your bones. It is a pattern revealed only by numbers that behave, and by patience that does not fall in love with noise. The line grows personal the way good work always does. One analyst, who loves sky charts the way some people love old songs, overlays the corridor on a star map from a century ago. The map, in sepia tones, carries pencil dots and the names of constellations written by a steady hand. Our century's corridor glides over that field like a veil. The past is unchanged. The map is merely showing that what was quiet then might now be ready to speak. It is a tender moment. The analyst takes a photo of the overlay, not to post, but to remember how long a single idea can travel. Now the animation slows. You are guided along the corridor itself, inch by inch, as if your mind were a satellite drifting in patient orbit. On the left, a sparse drift of outer belt asteroids, pale grains on black silk. On the right, a background field of stars, not many, but enough for lensing to sketch its brief halos if a compact lens slides between lamp and eye. Ahead, a region where the models suggest a slightly higher chance of a microlensing curve. The narrator does not promise a curve there. The narrator lets your breathing set the pace and simply says, if the curve appears, it will swell, round, and go. The soft rise. The calm peak. The gentle fade. What season might show the first brush stroke? The answer is drawn from the map of rise and set, from weather records, from when pulsars sit above the horizon at agreeable angles. The team chooses night windows in late winter and early spring, when clear air is likely and certain star fields ride high after midnight. This is not superstition. It is logistics and kindness. Most miracles in science are really the reward of good scheduling and honest notes. Within those windows, the watchers prepare a modest ritual. Telescopes breathe and open. Spectrographs are tuned to hear the tiniest color lean. Timing arrays sync their clocks to a standard so careful you could whisper to it and it would change. A simple guideline is posted for the wider circle. If you see a lensing curve in field A between these dates, notify channels X and Y. If you see nothing, say nothing with the same care. Nothing is data. Nothing is how we know we are not dreaming. In quiet corners of the room, human hopes anchor themselves to honest tasks. Someone calibrates an orbit model by remeasuring tiny asteroids that no one names out loud but everyone respects. Someone else trains a new set of eyes to read residuals without letting wishful thinking shade the lines. Someone writes, on a sticky note near a monitor, two words that are both instruction and lullaby: no hurry. Questions arrive like soft rain and are welcomed. Could a different unseen mass many small lenses instead of one make a corridor by coincidence? The tests say such a swarm would make the map rougher, noisier, full of little kicks, not one clean brush stroke. Could the line bend away at the last moment, tricking the windows and passing where we do not watch? It could, but then the timing smears and asteroid tilts would lose their chorus. Coherence would break. The line we have is the line that keeps the chorus singing. If it goes quiet, that truth is welcome too. The chapter turns down its light to talk about fear and sets it gently aside. A traveler far out among the cold gardens of comets does not turn the planets. It does not pull at Earth the way a storm pulls at ships. Its gift is not alarm. Its gift is knowledge, and the kinds of nights when a few people stay up together and let the sky write on their instruments in a hand so thin it feels like breath. The first visible brush, if it comes, will be beautiful in the old way, a comet at dawn low and shy, or a richer scatter of meteors one autumn that makes children look up and whisper, and makes old watchers write 2 words in their books, on time. In the final passes, the line through night stops being a drawing and becomes a set of promises. If we are right, here's when starlight will bow, here's when clocks will smear, here's how the Oort cloud might stir long after we are gone. If we are wrong, the windows will pass and the world will remain lovely. The sun will keep his drumbeat. The planets will keep their steps. The mobile will hang steady in the room's soft air. We will file our quiet no and turn back to the long watch with the same calm hearts. You breathe with the map, and the map breathes back. It feels for a moment like standing on a hill and tracing with a fingertip the path a river will take through fog. You cannot see it all, but you can feel the slope, the way water chooses valleys that were carved before it was rain. That is what a trajectory is in this story, a slope the night itself suggests. The traveler follows because that is what all mass does. We listen because listening is how we share a world. At the edge of the room, a screen dims. Graphs save. Someone places a folded sweater over the back of a chair as if saving a seat for morning. Outside, the stars look no different from the stars any night. Inside, a thin corridor glows on a quiet map, not to shout the future, but to offer a place where patience might meet it. Somewhere far from rooftops and roads, a compact traveler continues along the curve we traced, unaware of names, unbothered by plans, faithful only to gravity's slow handwriting. The lights lower. The corridor softens from line to thought. The instruments hum like distant bees. The air grows still. You can almost picture the first brush stroke subtle, careful, honest, arriving not as a trumpet, but as a whisper of agreement among starlight, orbit, and time. The glow thins to the horizon, and in that thinning, the quiet feels full, as if the night itself were pausing mid-sentence, holding something gentle on its tongue, waiting for the moment when the next small sign will slip into place and make the whole picture breathe. The night shift begins without fanfare. A door sighs shut, the lights dim to a soft glow, and screens bloom like small moons over desks. Outside, the parking lot is a mirror for starlight. Inside, the air tastes of tea and static. The work is not loud. It is a gathered quiet people and instruments keeping time with the sky. In one corner sits a watcher who favors paper. She draws stars as dots and writes times in small numbers that curve like birds. A pencil smudge at the edge of the page marks where her hand always rests. She listens to the telescope's gentle clicks and waits for the next line to take its place. Each dot is a promise, each time stamp a heartbeat. She knows the rhythm of her field so well that a new wobble feels like a thought arriving before a word. Near the back wall, a student leans toward a spectrograph's monitor. Thin lines run across the rainbow, steady as strings. On good nights, they hold still. On special nights, they lean a tiny bit, like grass in a breeze. He watches for that lean. He knows the rules. Don't celebrate. Don't guess. Don't get sleepy hope mixed into the numbers. If the lines truly bend, The saved file will say so in the morning. But still, when a fraction of a shift appears, he holds his breath, as if breath alone could steady the instrument's hands. At the center table sits a pair of analysts who came from different continents and met over a bug report. They share headphones and the same long playlist, the kind of music that feels like low tide. One checks pulsar residuals, those tidy numbers that mark when sky clocks tick early or late. The other cross-references the lensing windows, those nights when the corridor of interest crosses a field. Their voices are soft, the way you speak in a library. "This one's clean," one says. "This one's cloudy. Keep it marked," says the other. They talk about error bars, the way painters talk about light, always there, always shaping what is seen. Coffee cups leave rings that look like tiny nebulae on paper. Between tasks, a few of them draw spirals in the ring's galaxies doodled into the spill. A small act, a small laugh, a lift of mood. The night shift is patient work, and patience is easier when joy sneaks in and sets its cup down next to the keyboard. A meteorologist on the team watches the high clouds. He's not here to read stars, but to read air. He knows the sky over the observatory as if it were a friend who calls at odd hours. He reads wind shear at midnight and humidity at 2. He writes notes for the next shift. Clear window likely at 3:10. Keep the deep field ready. Avoid the low arc. He is proud when the instruments sing under clear air, and honest when they can't. In his ledger, he sometimes writes little weather poems. Thin veil over Orion, then gone. They are not in the report, but they keep the room human. Across the hall, a timing array lab rolls through its ritual. Atomic clocks glow with numbers that never rush. A whiteboard shows lines labeled with pulsar names: J1713, J0437, B1937. A new intern pronounces them carefully, as if greeting neighbors. The array's operator greets the night with the same motion every time, palms on the desk. A breath in, a check of sync. When the pulses arrive, the software writes them down like a meticulous scribe. A smear appears in one set. No one flinches. They log it, mark it, and put it next to last week's smear to see if the shape rhymes. Sleep is a visitor in a place like this. People learn to rest in small pieces. Someone naps under a coat at a table with a notebook over their eyes. Someone else stands and stretches beside a rack of humming servers. Outside, a fox crosses the road and looks at its reflection in the glass, as if it too is checking on the state of the universe. The fox leaves. The server hums. The watchers settle back into their seats. Words matter here, and the night chooses them carefully. Omen is a word the room holds at arm's length. Anomaly is allowed to sit closer. Candidate comes in like a friend who understands you don't want to talk too loudly. Secret is not a favorite. Caution is. They lean toward phrases like compatible with and consistent under, the way sailors lean into reliable wind. In calm tones, they practice saying a sentence that lets sleep return to anyone who hears it. Distant, gentle, and interesting. Loneliness is often named as a cost of science. Tonight, it feels more like a form of attention. Each person knows the others are awake, even when they cannot see one another. Someone in the spectrograph room taps the desk twice when a curve settles. Someone in the timing room taps back. A small signal, enough to say, "I'm here." Humility sits in the doorway like a quiet cat. A lensing curve may match the model. A timing smear may move across the right line of sight. Yet the room remembers all the times a bent connector or warm cable played pretend. They troubleshoot without pride. Swap detector 2, someone says without looking up. Rerun calibration with the older kernel, someone else says, already typing. The fixes are not just technical. They are cultural. Trust grows when people share their mistakes as quickly as their wins. An older engineer stops by on her way home. She worked nights for 20 years. She is the kind of person who carries a screwdriver the way others carry pens. She asked to see the latest curve, the one a student marked with 3 small stars and a question mark. She looks at it in silence and smiles. I've seen that shape before. Twice wrong. Once right, she says. She taps the error bars with her finger. These are good. Then she leaves her thermos on the desk by accident, a signal that someone should keep warm. There is fear in rooms like this, but it is not fear of the sky. It is fear of fooling oneself. The cure is slow. A programmer reads old code out loud, line by line, like a poem checked for rhythm and rhyme. A data lead reads a checklist the way pilots do, finger on each box, voice steady. Blind labels. Set. Cross array. Confirmed. Dispersion measure. Stable. Solar wind. Modeled. Perihelion updates. Logged. Human bias. Named. At the last line, someone always smiles. Naming it is half the cure. Between checks, the watchers share small stories. A telescope tech in training laughs about the time a moth landed on the beam and drew a bright, ghostly line across a camera test. A grad student shows a photo of her grandmother looking through binoculars at a comet the year she was born. A night manager tells of a storm that closed the dome, so suddenly he felt the building breathe. These are not in the report, either. But they are why the report has a pulse. The room carries hope the way a tide carries boats lifting without tossing. Hope loves being first. It loves the phrase, we might have it. But hope here is taught to hold a handrail. It leans forward with caution, and it writes with soft verbs. We may, we could, we'll see. In this way, hope becomes helpful. It keeps them awake and keeps them kind. What do they fear being wrong about? Not danger. That's easy. The sky is large, and the traveler, if real, keeps respectful distance. They fear misreading a messenger. They fear pressing fast forward on a story that wants to play at normal speed. They fear teaching the public a rumor when an omen is still forming. So they talk about how to tell the story when the time comes. We begin with scale, someone says. We lead with distance. We say it's beautiful, someone else says, because it is. The window on the far side of the room reflects a copy of the night. Cables and stars braided together. A meteor shoots a quick silver line. Heads rise and fall, a reflex as old as campfires. A few seconds later, in a room down the hall, a timing script prints a new row. The pulses arrive as expected. The meteor's stitch is not part of the traveler's thread. This, too, is a comfort. Not every bright thing is a sign. Not every sign is bright. In one late hour, when even the fox is gone and the last truck has rolled past on a distant road, the corridor map reappears on a screen. A quiet voice rehearses the plan for the week. Watch Field A on Tuesday, Field B on Thursday, share raw data by dawn. Post blind labels by noon, meet for a 10-minute check at dusk. The plan is not exciting. It is beautiful. It is how fragile truth is protected until it isn't fragile anymore. Do you sleep? People ask night shift watchers. They do, but their sleep has learned to be light. They dream in arcs and grids. They wake to make tea and, without thinking, check the sky the way parents check a child. Still there, they say. Still there, the constellations, the slow dance, the gentle veil over distant lamps. As dawn leans in, the room gathers itself. Files save. Plots freeze. Someone wipes the ring of a cup from a figure caption. Someone else tucks a note into a notebook. We might have it, but we might also have the world being its usual clever self. Chairs roll back with small sounds. Jackets take on shoulders. The door opens to a pale horizon. They step out. The air is cool. Birds try the morning with a few careful notes. Above, Jupiter watches the handover like a lighthouse that never tires. The night shift voices are soft as they cross the lot. See you tonight, they say, not to each other only, but to the sky. Behind them, the instruments keep their hum. A log window blinks. Run complete. A second line. No anomalies flagged. Candidate window stable. It is not a trumpet. It is a heartbeat. The night has given them patience. The day will give them distance. Whatever the traveler is, black hole, messenger, or misread memory, it will meet them on the quiet path they have prepared. And as the sun begins its slow rise, the last watcher presses a palm to the cool dome and smiles. The world is small and steady. The cosmos is vast and patient. Between them moves a thread of careful work, spun by hands that write softly and listen well. The door closes. The silence deepens. Yet hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood. The future is a slow river, and the traveler moves upon it without hurry. In the long view, days become beads, decades become threads, and centuries weave into a calm tapestry. The narrator's voice remains low, sleep-soft, describing what may come if a compact wanderer. The folder lies closed beneath a warm desk lamp, its edges neat, its title plain. What does it mean to keep a page sealed when the sky is speaking? The voice here stays low and careful. Silence, it says, is not a lock for treasure or a veil for fear. Silence can be a cradle for fragile truth. In science, as in sleep, we protect what is young by dimming the room and asking others to walk softly. Start with the simplest reason. Early data misleads easily. A curve can look clean until a cold cable warms. A pulsar's tick can smear because the solar wind decided to sing a different note. A meteor shower can drift a day early because counting methods changed with new cameras. The ethics of silence begins with patience, the decision to let time test a whisper before you speak it aloud. The public trusts the sky. The sky is safest in voices that move slowly. There is also scale. A rogue black hole at the distance is modeled here as a distant traveler, not a danger. But words can move faster than reason. Black hole is a heavy phrase. It carries stories that run ahead of facts. If we speak too soon, fear sprints. If we wait too long, rumor sprints. The ethical path threads between. It asks a kind question. When will sharing this help more than it harms? Help means clarity, context, comfort, and the joy of discovery. Harm means confusion, anxiety, and telescope time stampeded toward noise. In the quiet rooms, when to speak becomes a checklist rather than a feeling. Verification. Do independent instruments, using independent software, see the same whisper? Replication. Can another team reproduce the result without knowing where to look? Robustness. Do the signals hold when we blind labels, swap detectors, change pipelines, and model every known source of drift? Communication plan. Can we lead with distance, with scale, with sleep-friendly images and honest limits? Only when the box is filled does the sealed page deserve air. Secrecy does not mean solitude. Ethical silence invites more eyes. Not fewer, just not the world's eyes all at once. A small circle of observatories is asked to listen at the right times, to point telescopes without headlines. The terms are simple. Share raw data, log trivialities, announce nothing with the same grace as something. This is not a cabal. It is a garden fence. It keeps out wind while the sprout learns to stand. There is a duty to the public that grows alongside the duty to the data. People deserve to know if the sky is about to change their lives. This traveler, if real, does not. The duty here is different, to teach how science hears whispers, and why whispers are not yet songs. The language must serve rest. Distant, gentle, interesting. Evidence consistent with a compact, non-luminous mass. not a hazard? We will share more after independent checks. These are the sentences that let a listener put the story down and still sleep. Inside the circle, dissent is not only allowed, it is required. An ethical culture seats a skeptic at the head of the table. Their job is to ask the dull, saving questions. Did the new software version change a default? Are we overfitting? Are selection effects making pretty shapes from ordinary rain? Silence becomes ethical when it shelters doubt as warmly as hope. This is how the room earns the right to speak later with a steady voice. The ethics of credit live here too. Discoveries are communal, but headlines flatten names. The intern who circled the first clean curve. The engineer who found the bent connector. The meteor observer who caught the early shower and didn't claim a miracle. The retired hand whose old logbook bridged decades. Ethical silence holds space for those threads to weave before the fabric is displayed. When the story is told, the tapestry should show many hands. The sky does not belong to a single voice. There is also the matter of timing beyond science, earthly timing. Announcements should not land on nights when fear has other fuel. They should not compete with storms on the ground or grief in the news. We can wait a week, someone says, and they do. Truth that survives a week will survive a year. Hurry is a poor midwife for durable trust. Consider how to speak when the time comes. Begin with what will not happen. No change to planets, no threat to the seasons, no tug at tides. Then share what may. A comet that arrives shy and beautiful in some future dawn. A meteor night richer than average. A handful of stars that swell and soften as a gravity lens passes like a gentle veil. Show pictures that teach Einstein's lens as a lamp and a glass bead. The solar system as a balanced mobile. The cosmic web as roads between lanterns. Put error bars in the art. Put scale in the story. Name uncertainty as a friend, not a flaw. Ethics also asks who speaks, not just what is said. Trust leans into voices that have earned it by telling us when they were wrong. The spokesperson should be someone who has slept on the floor of a control room and also knows how to meet a camera's gaze without drama. They should carry phrases polished by many hands. If this holds, here is what it means. If it fades, here is what we learned anyway. Either way, your night sky remains the same friend as yesterday. What of the sealed pages? Their purpose is temporary. Every black bar should carry an expiration idea, released after partner review, released after a season's replication, released when we have a clear negative that teaches better than a rush to yes. Ethical silence has an exit. It is a pause with a promise. When that promise is kept and the page is open, the explanation should include why they were closed. To guard method, to prevent stampedes, to keep fear small and awe large. Transparency, when it arrives, ought to be layered. A one-page summary for tired minds. A longer note for curious readers. A technical appendix for those who want to check the math and the code. Open data where feasible, with blinding methods and pipeline versions documented like recipes. Share the failures. The nights that were cloudy, the runs that broke, the signals that went away when a cable was reseated. Honesty about wrong turns makes the road look safe to walk. There is an ethic of global sharing that stretches past language and borders. Night belongs to everyone. A traveler that brushes our map brushes all maps. The circle of listening should widen deliberately to schools with small telescopes, to citizen science networks that can watch meteor nights with calibrated eyes, to regions whose skies are often asked to listen but seldom invited to speak at the press table. We listen together is a sentence that ages well. In the room, a whiteboard collects gentle rules. Lead with scale. Explain error. Invite replication. Share credit. Publish code. Say, "We don't know," when you don't. Avoid metaphors that light the wrong parts of the mind. Replace harbinger with messenger, unless you mean warning, and you don't. Use art that teaches, not art that frightens. Remember that people listen at bedtime. Write so they can sleep. And what of secrecy that never opens? That is a warning sign, not a virtue. If years pass and a door stays shut, trust erodes. Ethical silence is a bridge to daylight, not a room without windows. The traveler's story will be stronger, not weaker, when it can be placed in ordinary light, where anyone may turn the page and see the same gentle curves. We return to the beginning. Silence is not emptiness. It is a choice. In the soft hours before a result hardens, the choice to hold back is an act of care for the truth and for the people who will carry it. The same care decides when to speak, how to speak, and who should be heard. The goal is simple. Let wonder rise without fear. Let knowledge grow without noise. And let the night remain a place where a listener can close their eyes and feel the world steady beneath them. The lamp over the folder hums. Outside, the stars keep their ancient order. Someone writes a short email, verification ongoing. Public note drafted. Comfort first, and closes the laptop with 2 hands. The building settles. If tomorrow brings a stronger signal, the circle will widen. If tomorrow brings a clean no, the circle will widen anyway, to share the lesson that even quiet rumors can teach. Either way, the story will move from sealed corners to open air in words that make room for sleep. The desk lamp clicks off. The folder remains, less secret now than simply paused, waiting for daylight to finish its work. In the deeper dark, the world holds steady, orbits loyal, clocks honest, starlight faithful to its curves. And as the room empties and the silence grows, it does not feel like an ending but a kind of promise, the sense that careful voices will soon lift the veil with gentle hands. And in the space between what is known and what is nearly known, a soft question will continue to glow, quiet and unafraid. The pages unseal like morning blinds, not all at once, but in soft bands of light. The report that once spoke in margins now clears its throat. No trumpet, no siren, just a careful voice, steady and warm. Here is what we think we know. Here is what we do not. Here is how to rest with both. First, the sentence that matters most. The evidence points to a probable rogue black hole small as black holes go, distant, and moving along a cautious line that crosses only the far outskirts of our solar system's garden. It does not glow. It travels in obedience to gravity's old roads. At our distance, it is interesting, not dangerous. The summary places these words at the top so that anyone, awake or half asleep, can keep breathing at an easy pace. What carried the case this far? 3 families of clues, each quiet, each honest on its own, and together a soft chord. The first is light-bending microlensing events that rose and fell with the clean curve gravity likes, with no extra color that a bright lens would add. Stars in certain fields swelled and soft as if a transparent bead crossed the line between lamp and eye. Not many, not dramatic. Enough to mark a corridor across seasons, a brushstroke where a traveler might pass. The second family is time pulsar clocks that slipped and then steadied, a handful at a time, in a pattern that drifted across the sky the way a shadow would if something heavy moved between us and several distant lighthouses. The smears were small, measured in breaths of a microsecond, but they returned under blinding and cross-checks, and they agreed with the lensing windows more often than chance can explain. The summary does not call them proof. It calls them consistent, which in this quiet language means durable under doubt. The third is motion-refined orbit models of well-behaved asteroid families, the kind that keep promises. Their perihelia shifted by slivers during windows that matched the other clues. Sunlight pressure, neighboring tugs, and thermal effects were subtracted with care. What remained leaned in the same direction the sky maps had traced. Again, not loud. Again, consistent. In the open text, the three families meet in a small diagram. Light, time, and orbit, overlapping like gentle ripples. The overlap is labeled candidate, not conclusion, and that humility is part of what makes the picture trustworthy. Now, the distance. The traveler's path lies far beyond the planetary lanes. Think out a garden, not inner rooms. Even a close pass in space can be many times the span between planets. The sun's hold is deep. The planet's dance is balanced. A distant passerby writes only at the edges comets stirred by a whisper, meteor streams that might thicken or thin by a night. The open summary repeats this in three ways, because comfort is a kind of accuracy. Your skies are safe. Your tides are steady. Your seasons keep their steps. How heavy is the traveler? The best fit band says a few to a few tens of solar masses, depending on exact speed and alignment. That band prefers a black hole to a neutron star to radio silence. The clean lens curves and the lack of dim star color all point that way. The text offers both likely stories without romance. A single massive star collapsed long ago and wandered ever since. Or two compact remnants merged in a crowded nursery, rang space-time like a bell, and recoiled onto this older road. Either tale is lawful. Neither changes the calm. Uncertainties, named plainly, how exact the mass is, how tightly the corridor narrows, whether a swarm of small dark lenses could mimic one cleaner traveler. The report shows where those explanations fail: extra noise in the swarm, color fog in a cold cloud, clock tilts that dispersion would betray. But it keeps them on the page because uncertainty is where honesty lives. You can feel the tone. Not defensive, not triumphant, simply careful. The way you carry tea to a friend who is sleeping. Predictions, offered not as promises but as small, steady lanterns. If the traveler holds to the model, a few more micro-lensing curves should appear along the same arc in the next observing season, with rise and fall times that fit a compact lens moving at a modest pace. Certain pulsars, already listed, should smear by a breath when the corridor crosses their lines of sight again. A short list of asteroid families should continue their whisperling in the same direction, then settle. None of these will be fireworks. All will be gentle if they arrive. Possible visible replies phrased like comfort, in years or decades to come. A long-period comet or two may wander in with a tilt that matches the map. One or two meteor showers might favor a slightly earlier night. These will be lovely to watch, not reasons to worry. The open summary even sketches how to truly notice them by logs and patience, by comparing seasons, by letting many quiet nights tell a pattern from weather. Bedtime advice wears science well. What of the sealed pages? They open enough to show the method behind the caution. Independent pipelines, blinded labels, cross-array timing, ionospheric and solar wind reconstructions, detector swaps, old data remeasured with new tools. The narrative is not a courtroom. It is a kitchen with windows, letting you see how clean the counters are and how deliberate the recipe has been. Mistakes that once fooled the room are listed as lessons. Then connector year X. Software default toggled, year Y. Cloud edge masquerading as curve, year Z. The list itself is a lullaby. We remember. We improved. We remain watchful. The summary speaks to words themselves. Harbinger appears here only to be replaced. The chosen terms are softer and truer. Traveler, messenger, candidate. The goal is not to dim wonder, it is to aim it. Fear tends to overlight the wrong places. The writers lead with scale, then explain lensing with the lamp and glass picture, timing with the metronome and hand image, and orbits with the mobile in still air. Art appears where art teaches, a star brightening and fading as a bead passes, a rainbow line leaning and straightening, an ellipse smudging by a hair and drying. Each figure wears error bars like fence posts. Fence posts let you walk the field. Sharing and credit arrive with the same slow grace. Many hands brought the cord together. Interns who circled first curves, engineers who found cables at fault. Meteor watchers who logged nothing enough times to prove that a something is real. Timing teams who labeled residuals with patience. And neighbors who rechecked everything twice. The open text names groups and methods more than faces, but the shape of shared work is clear. The sky is a commons. So is this result. What changes for you, listening now? Almost nothing, except the way you might look up some night and feel included. The summary invites a gentle watchfulness. Note the seasons of familiar meteor showers. If a shy comet glows in a future dawn, remember that it may be part of a sentence gravity began writing long before you were born. If you never see either, that is fine. This is not a story that requires extra waking. It is a story that lets sleep be easier because mystery has edges you can trace with a fingertip. The open note also tells you what would make the team say no. If the next seasons fail to show lens curves on schedule. If the pulsar smears drift where the map says they shouldn't. If asteroid leanings reverse or spread into noise. If an overlooked color fog appears in spectra, any of these will soften the candidate into an interesting mistake, which is still a gift. The report promises to say that aloud with the same clarity. This is the ethic that keeps wonder from souring. Equal love for yes and for no. Equal pride in clean answers and clean withdrawals. For those who want the deeper drawer, appendices open like patient doors. Code and pipeline versions. Calibration logs. A short, friendly math sketch of how mass times geometry becomes lens time and orbit tilt. A table of dates and fields to watch, already spoken quietly to partner observatories so replication can precede headlines. You can read all of it or none. The summary is complete on its own. But the open shelves matter. They are the shape of trust. Finally, the future box. It is not a countdown. It is a season plan. Continued deep field monitoring across the corridor. Extended pulsar timing in 3 small bands where smears should recur. Periodic checks of chosen asteroid families. A standing note to meteor networks about how to log early nights with calibrated eyes. Each line is small, domestic, even-folded shirts in a drawer. The feeling it leaves is the point. Careful hands keeping a room in order, ready to welcome whatever arrives. The last paragraphs return to you, to the listener who has stayed awake long enough to meet the thing as it is. A probable rogue black hole, distant and obedient to old roads. Evidence written in bent starlight, in clock beats that waver and settle, in ellipses that lean by a breath. Uncertainties named. Predictions modest. Beauty promised in the slowest ways, a comet's quiet arc, a meteor's soft stitch, a graph that rhymes with last year's graph while the world sleeps. If a visible reply appears, it will not shout. It will show itself as a soft glow in the east, or as a night when silver threads seem a little richer, as if the sky had added one more line to its letter. If it never appears, the letter still exists. Carried in numbers and patience and the artistry of instruments tuned to hear small truths. You can rest inside that. The room dims. The report, once sealed, now breathes in plain language. Outside, the constellations keep their careful shapes. Somewhere past the last bright ring of worlds, a compact traveler continues its lawful drift. The open summary does what good endings do. It leaves you steadier than before, but not emptied of questions. The glow fades along the page, and in that fading, it carries a quiet feeling that the night has told you enough to sleep, yet kept one gentle secret alive, waiting in the dark for anyone willing to listen a little longer. From far away, Earth is a bead of color set in black cloth, turning slowly, glittered at the edges by oceans and thin air. Up close, she's a small blue listener, clouds like soft breath, cities glowing in threads, deserts bright as old paper under moonlight. The traveler's story reaches this bead not as a blaze, but as quiet changes in light and time. And on the bead, people lean toward that quiet the way plants lean toward sun. The narrator's voice softens, as if speaking near a sleeping child. Look across a night coast where the sea holds a soft glow, and you can see how our world listens. Antennas on hills tilt like patient ears. Domes on mountains open as if they were eyes. In narrow rooms, spectrographs trace rainbows thin as hair. On screens, numbers drift in columns as tidy as orchards. None of it is loud. The listening is a craft made of patience. The same patience seasons used to turn leaves. The same patience tides used to keep their slow appointment with the shore. We live under starlight the way fish live in water, surrounded without knowing, guided by rhythms our bodies learned before language had long words. Long before anyone spoke of spectrographs or microlensing, sailors mapped stars to cross oceans, and farmers watched sky color to measure rain. The small blue listener carries those older habits into new ones. Orbits checked by clocks that never blink. Starlight tested for a shift as tiny as a sigh. Meteor nights counted like beads. Old listening and new listening share a single rule. Look long enough until wonder becomes knowledge, and knowledge becomes calm. If you stood on a dark roof and let your eyes adjust, you would become part of this craft by simply not rushing. Above you, the constellations draw shapes that stories trained us to see: Orion, Scorpius, the Dipper like a ladle scooping night. Behind those characters lies the real map, a web of structure, lanes where galaxies drift, roads between clusters, and the slow arcs of travelers that carry no light. We cannot watch the web with eyes, but we can hear it when starlight bends, when a pulsar's tick arrives late by a grain of a microsecond, when an asteroid's path leans by a whisper. The blue world is listening for that grammar and finding it friendly. Cities join the listening without knowing. Their rooftops shelter small telescopes that track meteor threads and teach students how to log a sky. Neighborhood parks host quiet star parties, where the first telescope view of the moon feels like a closed door suddenly opening onto a lit room. People circle phones around a faint comet just above the horizon and say, softly, "There," as if the word might frighten it away. This is science without a lab coat, a steadiness the traveler deserves. Hands held still, breaths kept slow, notes taken even when nothing happens. Nothing is a beautiful word here. On the small blue listener, nothing builds trust. 1,000 clean nights with no lensing curve make the one curve that appears feel honest. A decade of on-time meteor showers makes one early arrival look like a message, not a rumor. No signal logs are bricks that hold up the window where the first real signal will someday sit. The planet listens by collecting no's until a yes means something. Sometimes the narrator speaks to you directly. If you are awake in Karachi or Newark or Nairobi or Kyoto and the sky is clear, you can become an instrument by being still for 5 minutes. Find a steady star near the horizon and trace, with your eyes alone, how the world's turning carries it upward. Imagine that starlight passing a quiet lens. Imagine the path bending by less than your mind can picture. And then imagine how many careful minds together can still measure it. You are part of the together. The traveler does not know you, but the listening does. The blue listener is not one place. It is a necklace of places. In deserts where air is dry and stars burn steady, telescopes count photons like beads. On islands with radio-quiet laws, dishes sip faint pulses from pulsars and compare those sips to a shared clock with a strict face. In polar stations, the sky sweeps low and slow, and meteor counts clang like bright coins on the cold. Across all these rooms and fields, people write the same soft verbs. align, calibrate, subtract, repeat. The verbs are small. The net they weave is wide. There is humility stitched into this net. The traveler will not change our weather tomorrow. It will not change the length of a day or the slope of a tide. The gift it brings is not protection or threat, but perspective. Listening together shows us how much is shared. Skies, maps, error bars, patience. The small blue listener discovers that the best way to hold a mystery is with many hands. Science words enter, gentle as rain. Orbit, comet, trajectory, telescope, spectrograph, nebula, exoplanet. Each is a tool. Each is a lullaby when spoken slowly. Orbit means safe repetition. Comet means a visitor on a long breath. Trajectory means a path no one is steering, only obeying. Telescope means borrowed sight. Spectrograph means the voice of a star translated into color lines. Nebula means nursery, a place where gas learns to glow. Exoplanet means neighbor we cannot visit yet, but can still greet across light years. The traveler's chapter has no villains among these. Words. Only instruments, only patience, only a map that sharpens without losing its mystery. The story returns to people because the listener is made of them. A technician flips a breaker and puts a palm on the dome, feeling the machine's slow heartbeat. A student, eyes gritty with first-night nerves, learns to label files neatly so a morning analyst she will never meet can believe the numbers. An engineer who once fixed radios in a fishing town climbs a ladder and tightens a cable that will keep a curve honest at 3 in the morning. A retired teacher runs a meteor camera on her barn and uploads logs that will become part of a paper whose math she does not care to read. Everyone is inside the listening, whether or not they touch the traveler. Our planet's water, air, and life make the listening richer. Clouds can ruin a night, but they also teach planning. Winds can spoil a spectrograph's breath, but they teach correction. Even city light, a stubborn glow, teaches the habit of going to darker places or building smarter filters. This is how the listener grows, by learning the world it stands on while reaching for the one it watches. When the traveler's signs do align, a lensing curve swells and calms on schedule, a pulsar's beat smears and returns. A family of asteroids leans together by a thread. The news travels the necklace like a pulse in a vein. The language stays careful. Compatible with, consistent under, distant and gentle. The small blue listener does not bring panic to its own house. It brings a bright, ordinary pride, the kind you feel when a quiet prediction keeps its promise. Somewhere a dinner plate is set down and, before the fork lifts, someone looks out a window and smiles because the sky did what the map said it might. There will be missteps. The listener's ears are not perfect. A bent connector plays ghost. A code version changes a default. A solar wind nod pretends to be fate. The correction of these is part of the music. You fix the wire. You annotate the code. You subtract the wind. The mistake becomes a lesson that keeps the next night cleaner. The blue world listens better because it forgives itself. In time, the listening becomes a kind of friendship with night. People who measure learn when to close the dome and let rain have its way. People who watch for meteors learn their local horizon stories, trees that cut a swath, a hill that hides a radiant, a house light that clicks off late. Children learn to keep a small notebook and to name what they saw and what they didn't. Older eyes teach younger eyes how to be both eager and slow. This is not separate from the traveler. It is the culture that makes its subtle grammar readable. When the narrator steps back, the beat of Earth glows again, half lit, half night. You can see the thinnest skin of air catch moonlight and turn pearly. You can see a line of mountains like a quiet wave. You can almost hear the instruments hum across continents, a soft chorus under weather and sleep. The traveler is nowhere in the picture, but the listening has made a place for it, like a chair saved at a table. If it sits for a moment on our map, we will notice, not by eye, but by agreement among patient tools. What if the traveler never brushes another of our windows? Then the small blue listener will keep doing what it learned, reading starlight as handwriting, hearing clocks as choir, modeling orbits like lullabies that return. Other mysteries will arrive. They always do. Our practice will be ready for them, calm, precise, kind. And if a visible reply does come a comet shy at dawn, a long silver stitch across a quiet night, the world will share it the way it shares a song. In Karachi before school, in a farmhouse in Spain, on a New Zealand beach after dinner, on a ship's deck in the Pacific, people will look up and nod to strangers who are not there. They will feel smaller and steadier at once. The sky will be the same friend it was yesterday, only richer by one line. The bead turns. Day gathers the domes back into their shells. The sea lifts light on the cliffs. The small blue listener closes its notebooks and rests. Yet the listening does not end when instruments sleep. It continues in how we speak about the night to each other, in sentences that lead with scale, in art that teaches, in stories that let tired minds lie down without worry. The traveler moves on, dark as memory, lawful as tide. The planet listens, bright as breath, brief as a song. The glow along the horizon softens. The world exhales. Above the roofs and fields, the unbroken night still holds its patient grammar. And as the bead turns away and the instruments grow quiet, the silence deepened. Yet hidden in that silence was something waiting to be understood. Night folds over the world like a soft blanket. Screens dim. Graphs rest. Somewhere a dome closes with a hush you could mistake for a sigh. The story you have followed returns to its first quiet words. Anomaly, messenger, reply. Not as alarms, but as gentle steps on a long familiar road. A drifting shadow tugged at starlight. Instruments leaned closer. People listened with clocks and color and calm. Now, as you drift, the pieces settle into one picture that neither shouts nor hides. Imagine the sky as a page the size of forever. The letters are stars and the ink is time. Across that page, a traveler moved without light, writing only in the way the letters bent and the ink paused, then flowed again. Telescopes watched for those bends microlensing arcs that swell and soften. Spectrographs listened for a line to lean by a breath and then stand straight. Timing arrays measured the tiniest smear in a pulsar's steady beat. Orbit solvers traced ellipses and looked for a whisper of change at perihelion. None of this was loud. All of it was a language the night teaches to those who ask gently. The report, once sealed, now speaks plainly enough to keep your breathing even. A probable rogue black hole, small as black holes go, has likely crossed a wide corridor of our sky. It is far beyond the bright lanes of planets. It carries no fire. It does not break orbits or twist tides. It writes at the edges comets stirred like leaves at a pond's rim. Meteor streams that might arrive a night early in some future year. A star that brightened on time, and then, for a few hours. Brighter still as a gentle veil passed between lamp and eye. If you walked outside tonight, you would not see the traveler. You would only feel the calm of knowing that the map now has one more honest curve. Science stands beside poetry, not to compete, but to hold the same view from two moods. The facts keep their shape. Mass bends starlight. Time wobbles when a path grows long. Orbits flex and settle. The voice that tells them keeps its promise. Low, slow, and clear. The images keep you company as your thoughts grow light. A luminous haze of distant nebulae. A mobile hanging in still air, moving only when a hallway breeze passes. A metronome that falters once, then returns to the beat. A brushstroke across a dark canvas, so fine you could miss it unless you had practiced seeing. You might ask what comes of it now. Not a countdown, Not a warning. Instead, a practice. Watch the same fields again when the corridor returns to view. Listen to the same clocks when the season is right. Track the same patient asteroids with the same careful math. If the traveler remains in range, a few more arcs will appear where they should. A few more beats will smear where they must. Maybe in years or decades, a shy comet will climb a dawn and write a curve of light that fits the model like a hand finding a glove left on a windowsill. Or maybe the quiet will stay quiet, and we will have learned how to listen better, which is its own kind of reply. The human thread in this story ties every figure to a face you never saw. Someone circled the first clean curve at 3 a.m. Someone else found the bent connector that made a graph lie and taught the room to doubt with kindness. A retired engineer brought old logs that landed on the table like shells from another shore. A student renamed Harbinger to Messenger on a caption and shifted the weight of the room by a pound toward rest. The traveler did not know them. The traveler does not know you. But the listening turned strangers into a choir. On the largest canvas, roads between galaxies remain filaments and halos like soft rivers. The traveler follows those roads because gravity writes them, and everything obeys that writing in the end. You can picture the map now without fear. The Milky Way turns like a slow wheel of sparks. Beyond it, other wheels turn. Between them, a web holds the quiet shape. Along one strand, long ago, a star ended and left a fortress of mass without light. It drifted. It may have merged. It may have been kicked. It may have crossed emptier places than we can describe, then found our corridor and glided past. Close in cosmic terms, infinitely far in human ones. It did not come to us. We crossed paths with its shadow and learned a little more about how the universe arranges its sentences. What does such knowledge give? Perspective and a kinder clock. Worry has small rooms. Wonder opens windows. If a meteor shower arrives early some autumn, you will know how to tell story from rumor. Logs, patience, pattern. If a friend asks about black holes, you will carry scale in your pocket like a smooth stone. Distant, gentle, interesting. If a child points at a faint tail in morning light, you will say, "This is how gravity writes." And the child will sleep well that night because the sentence sounds like an old song that ends where it should. We speak of instruments, but the first instrument is attention. Cities hum. Oceans breathe. Deserts shine with frost. In all those places, people learn the same small verbs: align, calibrate, subtract, repeat. These are not dramatic words. They are bedtime words. They build a ladder anyone can climb, a teacher with a barn camera, a student logging nothing for the 10th clean night, an engineer checking a clock against another clock that sits across a sea. Even your looking up counts. The small blue listener grew stronger in this story because more eyes learned to look long and softly. In time, this traveler will leave our map behind if it hasn't already. Another mystery will come. The tools will be ready, tuned by this practice. The ethic will hold. Lead with scale, name uncertainty, invite others to check, share credit like bread. If a future whisper appears, an exoplanet atmosphere showing a strange color shift, a nebula's edge bending where no gas should press, a new rhythm in the choir of pulsars, someone will remember how the room kept awe honest and kept fear small. They will reach for the same pen, and the handwriting will be familiar. You can keep a few pictures as you drift. Einstein's lens, a lamp, a glass bead, a soft glow that rises and falls. The mobile, a balanced dance that ignores distant footsteps at the far end of the hall. The metronomes, a line of clocks that sway together when a hidden hand passes, then stand perfectly still. The cosmic web, roads not for wheels, but for gravity, with lanterns at the knots and dark lanes between. The traveler. Not a monster, not a warning, an ancient traveler without light, following rules older than stars. These pictures are gentle enough to sleep beside. At the border of sleep, the story returns to its first whisper. An anomaly is only the sky clearing its throat. A messenger is only a pattern that repeats where laws predict it should. A reply is only the way our instruments answer back. We see your curve. We hear your smear. We traced your line and found it kind. In this exchange, there is no enemy, no rush. There is only a patient conversation between a vast storyteller and a world that has learned to listen without interrupting. The pages close. The numbers dim. The last sentence of the open summary sits on the table like a cup of tea left warm for a friend. Probable, distant, lawful, beautiful. Outside, constellations hold their careful shapes. Inside, the air keeps the faint smell of dust and metal and late coffee. Somewhere, a notebook bears a ring from a cup, and in the ring someone has drawn a tiny galaxy for no reason but joy. That is the scale of it. Enormous truths traced by small hands. If you go to the window now, the night will be the same friend it was yesterday. You can point to the moon's slow path, to a planet low in the west, to a line of lights that is only a plane crossing layers of air. You can imagine, far beyond those familiar things, a fortress of mass gliding on a lane you cannot see. You can imagine, closer than that, a future comet lifting one bright syllable over the horizon. Both thoughts are steadying. Breathe. The cosmos has time. So do you in this moment. The unknown traveler is not an omen of harm. It is a measure of how well we can read, how kindly we can write back. We are here, our instruments say, on a small blue listener that sleeps and wakes and keeps notes. The universe answers in its old voice, curves and echoes, orbits and quiet. No rush, no panic. Only the next soft line. The building settles. The hum lowers. You turn away from the window. The bed remembers your shape. Somewhere beyond roofs and trees, beyond even the last cold garden where comets keep their promises, the traveler continues, unbothered by our names. And as your eyes close, the story does what good stories do. It becomes lighter than thought and clearer than fear, the soft glow of distant suns. The cradle of silence, the endless night that is never truly empty. The silence deepens, yet hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood.